Mayor Pro Tem. Our Mayor, Bill Brand, is not feeling well today, and he's going to adjust his chemo schedule so that he doesn't have to consistently miss one meeting every few months or so because of feeling bad from chemo. So he wanted me to communicate that, but he's in good health. And we're reconvening to open session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember MD.
Here.
Mayor Brand absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Obaji.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, Mr. City Manager, do we have any announcements of closed session?
We do, Mayor Pro Tem. One, the council unanimously authorized the city attorney to appeal the decision related to the case identified in item F1 on a go-forward basis.
All right. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn to regular meeting?
So moved. Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes. All right, welcome to the open session of City Council. We need to call it to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember MD.
Here.
Mayor Brand absent, and Mayor Pro Tem Obaji.
Here. All right, would you all please stand, take a moment of silence, and salute to the flag first. All right, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Presentations, proclamations, and announcements. Do we have our Honorable Supervisor Holly Mitchell here with us?
She's
All right,
Zoom. Oh,
come on up to the lectern if you'd like. Introduce yourself.
Okay, shh. So here's what you call these. Hold on here.
Supervisor, are you there? It's Jocelyn.
Hey, turn on her mic.
It's up.
No, they'll turn it on. There we go.
yeah.
Jocelyn, could you tell them I'm here? Yes, she did.
We hear you, Supervisor. I'm here.
You hear me? Hey!
Should be coming on.
Because I can't see myself, so thank you.
Can we promote her? There you go.
You want to pin the supervisor? No, don't mute her.
I don't see her. It's not.
Is there something on your camera, supervisor, like blocking the lens?
That's what it looks like. Yeah. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Forgive me, today is Tuesday and that's board day, and as chair, it's been a long day. Yes, there was something blocking my camera, like I hadn't even popped it up. I apologize.
It's all good.
That's not a good way to make a
Welcome to Redondo Beach. We're very pleased and happy to see you here.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity you've afforded me just to share a few minutes at the top of your agenda. I had a text earlier today from the mayor, so I'm sending warm, healing thoughts and vibes to the mayor. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So hello, Redondo Beach. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I became your LA County supervisor in the middle of COVID, and we really struggled to try to figure out how to reach out and connect to our city leaders. And so we started this process where I asked if I could have a few minutes on the agenda of all of the city councils that I represent. And so that's how this came about. I'm sorry I wasn't able to join you in person. I was actually looking forward to it. You were going to be my first in-person city council meeting. But again, our board meeting and closed session ran long. I just finished closed session about 20 minutes ago, so I knew I couldn't get from the Hall of Administration down to Redondo Beach. So thank you for allowing me to participate virtually. As you know, of course, redistricting occurred in December, and we've been working diligently as a team to get to know, and have all of the new residents and civic leaders in the newly constituted SD to get to know us. Jesselyn Waldron is there in the audience, who is the deputy in my office representing your city. So I hope that each of you have the opportunity to connect with her, get her business card, so you know how to reach someone in my office if you need us. If I could, I just wanted to share a couple of upcoming events our office is hosting. Really invite you to frequently visit our website, Mitchell at lacounty.gov, mitchell.lacounty.gov. We work very hard to keep it updated on issues of importance to every resident of the county, but specifically the 2nd District. Those of you who don't know me, I served in the state legislature for 10 years, almost 11 years. And before that, I was the CEO of a large nonprofit organization. What motivated me to run for office back in 2008 to the state assembly in the first place was really the state budget. And so the budget is kind of where I tend to focus because I know that we pay for what's important to us in terms of our household budgets and in terms of government budget. And so we're working very hard to try to make the county budget process as open and transparent and inclusive as possible. To that end, this Thursday, the 19th, we're hosting our 2nd virtual budget town hall. As the county is coming to the end of the fiscal year, we're really trying to make the budget as accessible as possible. So I hope everyone will go to my website and register. You can hear a little bit about the budget, learn the process by which the county engages in figuring out our allocations for $39 billion. And we want to hear your perspective in terms of things that you're prioritizing. A second initiative my team has launched is something called our Racial Justice Learning Exchange. We were approaching the 30th anniversary of the '92 uprising. And you know, how poignant given the mass murders we've seen here just this weekend, both in Buffalo and here in California. And so this Racial Justice Learning Exchange is really an opportunity that we're working with residents of the 2nd District and commissioners. You know, there are over 300 county commissions that I have the opportunity to appoint constituents to serve on, everything from library commission to just across the board, Children and Families Commission, the Sheriff's Accountability Commission, all of these various commissions. And I wanted to create an opportunity for the commissioners to come together and have a learning exchange as we talk about tools and ways in which we could identify implicit bias in government systems, in our own life experience, and how we can learn together. And so this Wednesday, May 18th at 5 p.m., we're hosting, I think this is our 4th Racial Justice Learning Exchange experience, and it's at a library in my district in Willowbrook. Each month has a different focus, and this month it's a dialogue about the true history of Cinco de Mayo. So I hope that you will consider joining us. Our next Racial Justice Learning Exchange experience will be commemorating Juneteenth, and we're gonna do that June 17th at Magic Johnson Park for our annual Juneteenth event. So again, I would encourage you all to check out the website. This is just an opportunity to introduce myself, to offer myself and my staff there, Jesselyn, as resources for you to your county government. My practice is really an open door policy. And so I wanted to make sure that you know that I'm availing myself to make sure that we have a two-way conversation about ways in which I can support you and the residents of Redondo Beach and how you all can, again, understand and know the function of your county government. Thank you all to the city council members for affording me this opportunity. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. And let's give our new supervisor a round of applause.
Thank you.
And if I can put in our 2 cents for our city right here, I'll just say, help us continue to support our unhoused population here in Redondo Beach as the county has in years prior, because we're very dedicated to that. Number 1. And 2, please help us. We might be sending you a letter after this meeting, about 5 pages long. Please personally read it. And we ask you to direct the C line extension down Hawthorne Boulevard, because that is the most equitable path. Thank you, Supervisor, for being here.
I appreciate that. I look forward to receiving the letter. I'll make sure that my amazing transportation deputy, Lily O'Brien, also has a copy. She supports me given my role as a director on Metro. Look forward to receiving that communication and happy to share some time with you this evening. Thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you for all the staff that you sent down here to us. Karishna was recently on the Metro Walk with her. We really appreciated having her. The residents liked showing her, their backyards, and she was very empathetic, really great on the ground. So thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to be in that space. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to our next announcement. We're going to forego the next item because Mr. Webb is not here today.
Mayor Pro Tem, we had someone that wanted to speak on this.
Do we have anybody who wanted to speak on the supervisor's appearance? Is that D1?
Yeah, no, actually, you have a speaker card.
Okay, give me 1 second to pull up our PC screen here.
We actually have an e-comment for that one also.
All right, on D1, Nikki Negrete Michelle. Oh yes, come on up. If Her Honor is still watching, she'll be able to see you.
She see you.
Yep.
Okay, greetings, Honorable Mitchell. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Redondo Beach. I represent the most overlooked and highly impacted communities along the Old Harbor right-of-way. I grew up an Army brat until my dad retired. We entered civilian life, and as a teen, I used to ride my bike from Gardena west on 182nd Street to Grant to get to the beach, and knew one day I would make Redondo my home. After working and saving, I got my first apartment on Carnegie Lane in 1981, and since then, I've lived in all 5 districts. Redondo is my home. My daughter was born and raised here. We bought a home on the eastern side of town to remain in the school district for her special ed. She was part of teen court and volunteered at the C Lab in Redondo for 4 years, and she graduated from Redondo Union High School in 2016. Each of us homeowners has their own story. In 2018, we learned about the Green Line extension to Torrance. Shocking, since the selling point on our home back in '07 was that the one last freight daily round trip, 30 feet from my home, would eventually be rerouted to the Alameda corridor, leaving this corridor unused and a nice opportunity for a green belt like Hermosa's. I came to community meetings, raised my hand, spoke, got rebutted, and shouted down. I attended Metro's public meeting about the 4 alternative routes. Where the road was being pushed, I shared my concerns, was dismissed and rebutted by Metro rep anytime I spoke up. I attended Metro's walks this past March, where more than 400 impacted homes were out of view, giving a misleading, idyllic vision. I pointed this out to Metro, did not accept talking points about safety as an excuse. I insisted my neighborhood was perfectly safe to walk, so they agreed and came back on April 11th for part 1. A group of us canvassed and learned people whose homes back right up to the right-of-way still had never heard about this. When they found out plans were to move the freight track even closer to their home and squeeze in 2 more rails, naturally, they were stunned. We had a huge turnout for the walk that Monday. Metro tried to cancel our walk part 2, but it happened last Wednesday, a real eye-opener. Very concerning ground instabilities were uncovered. The push for the road just makes no sense given the reality. Moving freight closer to homes and running commuter trains from 5 a.m. every 6 minutes during peak hours, 12 minutes off peak till midnight, will be disruptive to everyday life, sleep, the landscape, feelings of safety and well-being in our own homes, and after years of heavy construction just feet from my house. The Hawthorne elevated route solves all these problems and will boost that commerce sector. It will provide commuters with a better destination to shopping, restaurants, a hotel, Galleria developments, theaters, and healthcare. The elevated profile will enhance rider experience, boosting ridership, a well-known goal for Metro. This bustling vision is exciting for all of us. Thank you. I made it.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Comment?
Next speaker is e-comment.
Oh, no.
Submitted by Jeanette Kurth. The elevated metro extension down Hawthorne Boulevard is the only reasonable option. By using the elevated Hawthorne alignment, the struggling commercial businesses in Lawndale, Torrance, and Redondo Beach will be revitalized. The loss of city sales tax revenue has fallen by millions, caused by the Galleria's stagnancy has been profound. A station a station at Artesia and Hawthorne is a perfect stop for customers and employees going to the mall and for the planned 300 apartment residents and hotel guests to be built at this location. Traffic will not be impacted. The existing freight line on the right-of-way does not have to be moved 15 feet closer to our property lines. Our safety will not be impacted by possible derailments of compressing 3 tracks along the right-of-way meant for 1 track. My husband and I have lived on a quiet cul-de-sac at the end of Fiscal Court for 43 years. We do not want the quality of our lives destroyed by the addition of the Metro 2-line light rail built along the right-of-way only feet from our home. The existing rail is elevated 35 feet above our property. The noise and vibration of trains passing by every 6 minutes from 5 a.m. to 12 midnight, 19 hours a day times 365 days a year, with only 5 hours of possible sleep a day, will erode our health, increase our stress and anxiety, and shorten our lives. Not to mention the possibility of derailment of the 16 to 30 volatile fuel tankers being hauled by 3 locomotives around a curved line from the refinery 2 to 4 times a day. 480 plus Redondo residential homes will be impacted along the right-of-way. Put yourselves in our position. If you were one of these homeowners, would you want this next to you? No privacy, bright lights beaming down on your property throughout the night. Do the right thing. Either way, the tracks have to be elevated. Your increased cost to having to build additional bridges at overpasses, walls to support the elevated land mass feet from our property lines, destroy existing businesses that have encroached within the right-of-way. Hawthorne Boulevard has the center green space available and was the former route of the red car. Concludes comments for this item.
All right, thank you. Madam Supervisor, anything else you'd like to add before we?
I appreciate that. I would just ask if the member of the public who was there, I saw her reading her testimony, if she would mind sharing her written testimony with my staff, we will include it and take it under advisement along with the 5-page letter that I'm gonna receive from the council as well.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Supervisor. We appreciate having you here and wish you continued success in your supervisorial role.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that you allowing me to participate.
Thank you. All right, we're moving on to, we're skipping item D2 and moving on to item, approving the order of the agenda. Does anybody wish to take, change the order of agenda, starting with Councilmember Ehrenheim?
No, I'm good with the order of agenda.
All right, Councilmember Lowenstein?
I'm fine with it, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Horvath, good? Councilmember Empty? Good, I'm good with approve. All right, there's a motion by Councilmember Horvath to approve the order of the agenda. Any seconder?
Second.
All right, seconder by Councilmember Ehrenheim. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's approved, 5-0. All right. Blue folder items. Do we have any blue folder items for today's meeting?
Yes, we have D1, which is for the Honorable Holly Mitchell of Public Communication. We have J1, public participation on non-agenda items, public communication. L1 for the public hearing, proposed budget, public communication. And 2, related to the request for proposals for the solicitation of design firms for the renovation and rehabilitation of the Seaside Lagoon, public communication. For N5, regarding grant funding available to support the expansion of electric vehicle chargers, public communication. And P1, regarding establish of and appointments of a charter review advisory committee, mayor and council appointments, list, and public communication.
All right, is there a motion to receive those for the record?
So moved. Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Nope. All right. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Jesselyn for coming down here in person also to accompany the supervisor.
Mayor, announcements for council members.
Did we skip those?
Yes.
Got it. All right. We'll go back to announcements by council members. Councilmember Ehrenheim.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Eleanor, can we share my screen there for a second?
Okay, so
First, I just want to say that I have my community meeting this week, Saturday, at Alta Vista, 9:30. It's always the second Saturday of the month. Had a great lively conversation on a multitude of items. And I have my online community meeting tomorrow night, which we'll be discussing Ohm Connect and a couple other items. and it should be a fun meeting. So I will send out another email. If you're not on my email list, let me know. Registration for Zoom, it will be streamed via Facebook as well, but there's no participation. What I have up here today is in the Riviera Village, a new, what do you call it? Crosswalk in the Riviera Village, right across the street, or right at L&L Barbecue. You can see the different angles here. We did take out 2 parking spots. We've been working on this for quite a number of years. Why is this important? Well, because at this intersection, there was no crosswalk going across the street. And if any of you are familiar with this particular area, all the kids come down from Riviera Hall and they're always streaming across the street. And it's just a large, wide path. There's nowhere for anyone to park. I got this idea many years ago when I was talking to Dave at the Casa Playa. I brought down our assistant city manager at the time. I said, this thing needs a crosswalk. This was many years ago. And it's kind of cool. You see a little tunnel here for the water that comes down, which, trust me, is needed. And so there you can see, it comes right out where all the kids are at, right there, right across the street. We did take out 2 spots, and working at the speed of government, we got this done. And I got a lot of comments when this started happening a couple weeks ago. Nobody really had any idea. And, just want to make sure staff knows that I am perfectly fine with that. Just make things happen. So thank you for making that happen. I appreciate it. This is the way it looks here up the street. That middle stop sign now is an LED stop sign as well. It's been hit many times by people, which really goes to show you how people cut these corners and just need to slow down, make a wide turn around all these areas. So a lot more improvements happening for the Riviera Village. And I really want to thank staff and engineering and our contractor to make this happen. They did it within a budget of extra budget of money. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I know the Riviera Village really supports it. I was down at the bid meeting this morning. They were all very glad that it's there now. So nice big improvement for the Riviera Village and safety down there. So other than that, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Narenheim. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yes, thank you. We had our first community meeting for District 2 last evening in 2 years in person. And it was so good to get out there and to hear directly from my residents, not looking through a computer screen. And good engaged conversation on everything from pickleball to budgets to everything you can think of that we've discussed over the last month or so. So thanks for the residents for coming out. Two more items. One is the next virtual meeting, community meeting of the King Harbor's amenities plan is on May 31st, 6:30 to 8:30, virtual. Are we not going to have it in person? Just only virtual? Do we know? I don't know. Just virtual.
Yeah, I think this one is just virtual, but I'll confirm with staff and
Okay,
we'll make that clear.
You know, some people want to be, they're not able to convey everything they want on Zoom. So,
Yeah.
But if we want to open it up to that, that would be interesting. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention beach life. That happens to be in the district I represent. What an event. I mean, I was there all 3 days, and congratulations to Alan Sanford and his team. But I really want to thank our police department, our fire department, and our public works department. You guys did an amazing job. You were everywhere, and but not being obtrusive. I mean, it was great. You guys were responding to everything, and it just went off so well. I can't tell you how happy the smiles I saw on people's faces. And I'm probably stepping out of bounds by saying this, but I honestly think it's the best thing we've got going on in our city right now. It's amazing what's happening there. So, you know, it's only getting better. I know there's a new one coming up in September, Beach Life Ranch, and then we'll be doing this hopefully twice a year. It's great for our budget, fills up our hotels, and people get entertained. And even people I know that were neighbors were happy, were really happy. And so that's not always easy to placate folks that are right, you know, ground zero for a concert. But I want to thank everybody from city staff for all the help you provided, and super excited for the next one. So thank you. That's it.
Oh, Councilmember Horvath, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah,
Councilmember
District
Lawson.
3 community meeting is tomorrow night from 6 to 7:30 PM. It will be virtual. And my special guest will be City Manager Wazanski, and we'll be talking about the budget and capital improvement project plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Horvath. Councilmember MD.
Hi. So for all you gardeners out there, this Saturday is the Compost Giveaway at Wilderness Park from 8 a.m. to noon. So make sure you go out there. And I also went to Beach Life on Saturday because I am a huge fan of Michael Fronte. And I was so thrilled to have him there. And it was really fun to watch him run up to the Sketcher VIP section and sing right in between Chief Kaufman and Chief Hoffman. So that was a fun venue and had a great time. Thank you.
All right. I don't have a community meeting this next month because we're in budget season, but we'll have the first one in July since we've already had one for May. I want to thank our police department and our fire department for their fine work at Beach Life. You know, particularly Quality of Life Officer John Bannock and Community Services Officer Kyle Lofstrom, as well as the Chief Joe Hoffman, were in their black uniforms in the sun all day long, all 3 days. And I know that in the fire department, yeah, I saw Division Chief May, Division Chief Yang, a lot of folks, and they're busy even with, imagine diagnosing regular life problems like heart issues in the middle of a concert because somebody's kind of overwhelmed by the environment or something like that. It puts a lot of strain on their body. So these professionals are working diligently and hard all weekend. I really appreciate it. They made it a super fun, safe Beach Life event. I was there all 3 days, and I hate to rub it in, talk about how great it was because our city manager was here working, I think with one of his assistants, Ms. House, on the budget. And they produced a very big budget with a 10-page cover letter to go with it. So thank you for your fine work all weekend as well. And I agree with Councilmember Lowenstein. It's probably the best thing, one of the best things that we have going on here in Redondo Beach. It's kind of enriching for the soul to have an experience like that. So, all right, moving on to our next items. We already admitted blue folder items, and moving on to consent calendar. We'll go through the consent calendar and see if anybody wants to pull any items. Councilmember Nierenheim.
I'm good, thank you.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
Thank you.
Councilmember MD.
Nothing except for the H10 that we have a speaker on. So I guess I'm going to pull H10. I think that's the one he wanted pulled, right? Yeah, pulling H10.
All right. And I have nothing to pull. So we'll take a vote. Do we have any public comment on any items besides H10?
Okay, let's see, I don't have any on Zoom and no e-comments. So
Do we approve those first and then go to the single ones? Yes.
and then we need to ask if anybody else in the audience.
Okay, does anybody in the audience wish to speak on the consent calendar other than H10?
Motion to approve.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Nierenheim.
No, sorry, Horvath.
Horvath, sorry.
I'll second it.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Nope. All right. That passes 5-0.
Then I'll read H9.
Sure.
Adopt by title only resolution number CC-2205-029, a resolution City Council of Redondo Beach, California, leasing certain properties to Monica Quintero, an individual. And that's it. Oh, one more. H12, adopt by title only resolution number CC-2205-028, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, amending the official book of classifications for the position of transportation engineer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. H10. This is approve an amendment to the affordability agreements for the Heritage Point Senior Apartments Project. Approve an affordable unit overage agreement for the Heritage Point Senior Apartments Project. Mr. Zerlip, would you like to come up and speak on it? Or would you like a staff presentation first?
We'll make a presentation. Well,
I don't know that there is one. Do you have anything you want to add? No, all right. You can come on up.
thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem and City Council members. Don Zerlip from District 4 and resident of Heritage Point. I'm very familiar with the original agreements. I don't think many people are. I was on this dais when we approved the last agreement to extend the affordability. I'm pleased to see this revised document so that it makes clarity, but there are very big holes as far as I am concerned. The document talks about the income levels as defined in IRC paragraph 142 median income. When you go to that section of government code, you find definitions. You find no chart of median incomes. In fact, the definition says the income of individuals in area median gross income shall be determined by the secretary. Doesn't say which secretary of whom. When you start to look at the possibilities for adjudicating or finding what these median incomes are, there are two places where I have found them. And the fact that we don't say in this document where to find the incomes makes for a problem. Because if you go to HUD, if that secretary is supposed to be the HUD secretary, if we look at the 2021 income limits, it says the median family income in Los Angeles County is $80,000. And then it breaks it down in percentages by 1, 2, 3, 4 member households. If, on the other hand, you look at Fannie Mae, they show the median income for 2021 at $86,100. And then we have these incomprehensible calculations that are part of your document. Firstly, if you see here, you see a different amount for a 1-bedroom unit and a 2-bedroom unit. All of the calculations in the document are stated to be by the number of residents in the property, not by the number of rooms or bedrooms of the property. So, and where they start to do the calculations for the 41 moderate income units, I don't know where $94,600 came from, and I certainly don't know where $106,400 comes from. So I think those are problems that need to be identified in this document before you approve it. And finally, there's part of this is refunding money to people that are in the low-income housing that have been paying overages for a while. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I signed an illegal lease with a rent on it that was outside of what the calculations were for the rent based on HUD median income. And I have since 2015 been paying more rent than is allowable, but there are no considerations for the median income residents to refund to them overages that they have paid. That's all I have at this time. I hope you'll change the document.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zerlip. Does anybody want to speak from the Heritage Point? Come on up.
Yeah.
Or anybody?
It might be helpful to have our consultant, who was very helpful in putting these documents together, Kathy from Kaiser Marston, come forward and maybe answer those very basic questions. We also have RJ from Heritage Point, who is part of this. This has been a longstanding issue. Mr. Zerlip mentioned that the original documents lack significant clarity. That's an understatement. This has been an effort that's been years in the making, trying to reconcile the various bond documents, make sure we're all clear on how to administer the site going forward. Kathy was really helpful in finally reconciling these various agreements. And we feel like we've come to a very clear and fair resolution. I would ask maybe Kathy to answer Mr. Zerlip's specific questions if
I could
possible.
just give the public some background on this as far as what I've read in the staff report is that 69 units in this development are covenanted to be affordable. There are 3 different sections of affordability, or 3 different definitions applicable to 28, 41, and then applicable to all 69 units. So this is an attempt to harmonize and come up with one uniform method for determining what is affordable in the Heritage Point project, both for the residents so they know what they can be expected to pay in the future, and also for the owners of the property so they know how much they can budget to improve or to fix issues that come up at the property. So with that, let me turn it over to our speaker. If you would introduce yourself and.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Head. I'm president of Kaiser Marston, and I am your housing consultant. Yes, your preamble to that is outstanding, and I understand the commenters' concerns. I think what's important to understand is one of the key things we did when my analysis and then the subsequent agreement was to actually define area median income. So I'm sorry the gentleman couldn't find where those incomes are and where the rents are published, but they are both published numbers. And they're published by the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee. And that is in compliance with IRC 142. So that answers that question. The medians are there. The other statement that the commenter made, I would have to just disagree respectfully, is actually the agreements always said that the rents were based on benchmark household sizes. And so in all of the agreements, it was the number of bedrooms in the unit plus one became the benchmark standard for setting rent, not for setting the incomes of the households who lived there, because some are one person, some are two person, et cetera. So you qualify the household on their actual income, but then the rent is set based on the identified percentage of the IRC 142 income times the benchmark household size. And so that's not a change, actually. It was always those benchmark household sizes.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Can you have her state once again what the website is where these benchmarks can be found?
All right, Mr. Zerlip, you got your 3 minutes, but there's a request if you could state the websites where these benchmarks could be found.
Sure. It's the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee. If you look that up under the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, they have a chart for income and a chart for rent for every county in the state.
All right, and anything else, any other questions, Mr. Zerlip, just email me as your representative. I'm happy to correspond with them and try to get you some answers. All right, thank you, Kathy.
Good to see you in person, Kathy.
Yeah, good to see you. I didn't recognize you in person. So Kathy is one of our probably most covenanted, respected consultant because she's helped us tremendously on our inclusionary housing ordinance and is extremely knowledgeable in the field. So I trust her greatly. All right, I'd make a motion to approve this, to approve H10.
Second.
All right, we have a.
Just for the record, I just wanted to say that there's
public
no
comments?
public comments for e-comment or Zoom.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask. All right, we have a motion by myself and second by, motion by Councilmember Lowenstein, second by Councilmember Horvath?
Yep.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All against? No, nobody, and Councilmember Narenheim absent on that.
Okay, thank you.
He didn't vote on that. 4-0.
Yeah, we got it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving on to next item here is public participation on non-agenda items. This is the time when the public can come forward and speak about anything you'd like within the 2 or 3 minute cap. And the only rule is it should not be on our agenda. You should save those comments for when the items are on the agenda and they come up. And the other rule is that we cannot respond to anything that you say here. So let me call up first Sarah Martin, please.
Before you start the clock, I would just like to say that this is slightly different than the e-comment that I submitted, so. Yeah.
You get to choose one or the other.
Choosing this one.
All right, excellent.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Martin, District 1. Saturday, a white teenage boy who was radicalized to believe in a racist conspiracy theory and to use a weapon and body armor designed for the military massacred Black Americans. I credit this act to voters whose political party leaders and preferred news sources have been promoting the vile weapons of racism and gun proliferation and committing stochastic terrorism against Americans for years. I speak tonight for the sane among us who do not feed our brains and hearts from the hateful, ignorant sewers of faux news. We will vote in every election, which is where we have the power to stop supporters of today's GOP from facilitating hate of non-whites, non-white immigrants, and gun proliferation. After 7 years, I still overestimate the character and intentions of those who choose to identify as MAGA Republicans. There are those who, along with their bad faith, irresponsible conspiracy theory spouting elected and election losing representatives cannot and will not see the evils which their party's philosophies, policies, and rhetoric promulgates. May they finally be aware and responsible enough to never engage in whataboutism, denial, or tone policing when courageously challenged on the basis of their support for that shrinking political party. If we as human beings fail to grow well-informed, empathetic, and secure enough to mold our own independent identity in a diverse nation, an extremist nationalist party and a toxic information and communications environment led by dishonest, anti-democracy, pandering, power-hungry narcissists in desperate need of validation and approval, telling us how we are victims and how others are inferior, may seem impossible to resist or abandon. Each of us is responsible for choosing who and what we identify with and stand for. To former Republicans with the integrity and clarity and courage to no longer see yourself in the faces of Republicans who blow racist dog whistles and want loaded guns to be ubiquitous, which inspire the weak and the evil to commit violence against others, I say a deeply felt thank you. We stand together for all, not just the ones who share our neighborhoods, identities, and beliefs. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Next.
Motion to receive and file, because you can't, just receive and file that?
All right, motion to,
Second.
second, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I'll email that to you tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
As I've only got one.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Zerlich. And after that will be Ms. Drummer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. I'm here tonight to express my frustration at trying to communicate with the city. Years ago, we actually had an operator that if you called this city, somebody picked up the phone. If you asked to speak to somebody, they either gave you the extension or they connected you directly. Today, can't be done. I can't tell you how long on the phone this afternoon, must have called half a dozen or more different departments. Got voicemail, 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 voicemail. Not the way to get work done quickly or to get an easy answer. In fact, if you have somebody you specifically wish to communicate with, you can't find their email unless they are a city council member and maybe a department head. But if you know who you want to speak to, you get no help. You get no help communicating, reaching them at all. And it's a great frustration. I would hope that the city council could consider what it might mean to at least have somebody to answer the phones, at least the main number when somebody calls the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zerlich. Mary Drummer. And next up will be Holly Osborne.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Mary Drummer, and I'm a resident of District 1. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been a volunteer with Beach City's Health District for over 16 years. I serve the district as an executive volunteer, as a member of the Community Health Committee, the Volunteer Advisory Council, and I'm a past recipient of their Core Value Award for Integrity. For anyone even loosely engaged in local politics, it's been impossible to ignore the detractors of the proposed reconstruction of the old hospital building on Prospect, which is not up to seismic code and doesn't function well with our programs. Worse than mere detraction, their public commentary is wholly divorced from the truth. Beach Cities has held over 60 public meetings to engage with the public and has already shown an abundance of compromise with residents from Torrance and Redondo Beach. The size of the project has been decreased, lessening construction duration and added more open green space. They listened and responded in favor of the opponents of the project. These antagonists have used a persistent campaign of disinformation to soil the project's legitimacy, which has rippled to the validity of its programs, the staff, and volunteers themselves. I participated in BCHD's COVID response. We worked in conjunction with LA County, local hospitals and clinics, and 8 school districts. We administered over 155,000 tests, vaccinated more than 23,000 doses. Almost 5,000 meals were delivered to Beach Cities residents, and 90 individuals were vaccinated in their homes, utilizing over 500 volunteers in these efforts and more. BCHD initiated a program involving licensed volunteers to follow up with those testing positive, giving medical advice to manage symptoms and how to isolate or quarantine to prevent the spread, thereby keeping them out of emergency rooms when possible. I personally made over 1,000 of these calls. Today will mark the day when BCHD volunteers start a campaign of their own, with the aim of educating the community on BCHD programs and the project itself. This agency is the crown jewel of the Beach Cities and the South Bay's best-kept secret that shouldn't be a secret. Our programs, which serve the residents of the South Bay over their entire lifespan, are aimed at improving the quality of life of its residents and are administered by a nationally recognized staff and over 1,000 volunteers who save taxpayers roughly $1 million in wages every year. We're excited to bring more information and personal stories to educate residents of the Beach Cities on our programs and accomplishments. Beach Cities Health District is more than a building. It's all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stromer. Next up, Mr. Osborne.
Good evening. I'm Holly Osborne from District 5. I want to educate some of you on the housing element and the SCAG-RENA process, because I've noticed that's been a divisive issue, and I've probably studied it more than anybody in this room. And so I want to make a few points. For the uninitiated, RENA stands for Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and Redondo's RENA is 2493. This means we have to change our zoning to come up with 2493 houses. That is not easy. It's not easy in a city as dense as ours, over 11,000 people per square mile. There are 197 cities in the SCAG area, that's the 6 Southern California area, and then Redondo is among the 20 densest in the SCAG region. 47 of the 197 SCAG cities appealed their RENA, so that should tell you that there was something wrong with the process. And here's what you need to understand. The process is fundamentally flawed because it starts with a total RENA number in the SCAG region that is too high, the 1.34 million. Another think tank came up with a number roughly half of that. Many senators and assembly members, including our own assembly member Al Muratsuchi, called for an audit of the HCD RENA numbers. The audit report was just released and it is scathing. Basically, it says the state and its agency, HCD, did a lousy job. I will just give you one quote. Overall, our audit determined that HCD does not ensure that its needs assessments are accurate and adequately supported. The report, unfortunately, did not give the numbers like it was supposed to, because they were said we were in a lawsuit. But I want to tell you some other background stuff. As you know, the city has been working on a housing element. Every city in the state has to do an element every 8 years, but there are staggered starts, and unfortunately, our region had to go first. And so we observed rule changes and changes in the middle, and the bottom line is, of 197 SCAG areas, only 6 met it by the deadline, okay? And one rule change was promoted by a bill introduced by Assemblymember Bloom. The bill is AB 1398, and its purpose is to punish cities who have not got their housing element certified on time. That means 191 cities are subject to this punishment, including Redondo. Our Assemblymember Al Muratsuchi did not vote for this bill, but Senator Allen voted for something that will publish every city in his district. Even Assemblymember Bloom now realizes that his bill was too harsh, especially concerning the SCAG. So this is what I want people to do. Please extend me a little bit.
Yes, we'll
Okay.
extend you another minute. Motion?
Motion to extend for a
Second.
minute.
Thank you. I would like everybody to overwhelm Al Muratsuchi's email with a letter of thanks for not supporting AB 1398 and for calling for an audit. And at the same time, overwhelm Senator Allen's email with, I am disappointed that you voted for AB 1398, the bill on housing elements. This bill punishes all the cities in the area you represent because none of them met the February 11th deadline. However, there's something positive that can come out of this. If Mr. Bloom has to amend his thing and the article in the paper said that he was working on it, here's what I propose that we ask our assembly members and legislators to do. Ask both of them to work with Bloom first to suspend the due date for the SCAG housing elements, but until a new RENA allocation is determined for the SCAG area. I want to add that. And if we can get all our people united, and then the last remark is going to go especially to the District 3 councilman, because he's with the COG, and he can reach other people. And let me tell you, Lawndale got it worse than we did. I could give you 10 more seconds, but you've got to unite the other legislators and assembly members too. Okay, usually a little smoother, but I spent part of my afternoon working with my second graders who were a lot more important.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Be sure to also email our city attorneys the info that you got, please. All right, moving on to anybody else want to participate or speak on non-agenda items? You don't need to fill out a pink card, just come on up and speak. Any e-comments?
No, and I don't see any from Zoom, no hands raised.
All right, moving on. We have a public hearing tonight on receiving the proposed budget. So let's go over ex parte communications. Councilmember Nierenheim.
So far, thank you. I have talked with Councilmember Lowenstein, and I briefly spoke with the mayor about it. I have not talked to anyone in the public about it, other than just saying we're talking about it. And I talked with our city manager about it just briefly for a minute. So that's it.
All right, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, I talked to Councilmember Nierenheim, I talked to the mayor, I talked to City Manager Wodzinski, and I did talk to the public yesterday at my community meeting, so.
All right. Councilmember Horvath.
Just City Manager Wodzinski.
All right. And Councilmember MD.
Just City Manager Wodzinski.
All right. And myself, I haven't discussed the substance of the budget, just the subject of the budget with the city manager and the mayor. All right. Item L1, public hearing to consider the fiscal year 2022-2023 proposed budget and 5-year capital improvement program and procedures. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a long process. You mentioned, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, that I was here over the weekend. It wasn't Ms. House that I was here with. It was virtually here with Jennifer Paul, our finance director, who has authorized me to share this, but over the last week has been battling COVID. And we had to finalize the budget with her at home since last Tuesday. So to add to our typical budget trials and tribulations this time of year, we also had to overcome that. So a big thank you to Jennifer for persevering and sticking with us at a time when she would have probably much rather been sleeping and recuperating. So she was a real trooper in getting this done, along with the rest of our financial services team. And of course, Luke and Elizabeth were helpful in my staff and all of our department heads and their support staff in putting this together. It's a voluminous document. It's one of the single most important actions that we take each year. We propose the budget to you, and as prior city managers have said, from this point forward, it really does become the city council's document. You ultimately own this as your, I think, most poignant annual policy tool. And it's very important that we spend additional time deliberating and looking at all the various key features. So we have our budget cover. It's not meant to be analogous in any way, shape, or form. You could draw comparisons to tidal wave of funding and the like. It's not that. It's just a pretty picture of our ocean front. So maybe next slide, please, Luke. Putting the budget together was a little different this year than it's been in the past. We're not going to tonight get into the particulars of revenues and expenditures. I'm not going to spend time reviewing the decision packages per se. We'll have time to go through that on June 7th with our operating budget hearing and then at our later subsequent hearings thereafter. But what we did do this year that was a little bit different than what we've done in past years is spend a little time seeking additional input from the community before deliberating and preparing the budget rather than after. And in addition to that, I personally visited just about every commission over the months of April and May to receive direct feedback from the commissioners and engage some of their interest as well to help inform the proposed recommendations that are in here tonight. And one thing that we did in recognition of that effort is tweak the way we structure our decision packages, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. In general, the document, as was mentioned by Mayor Pro Tem Obaji, it includes a transmittal letter from me that does provide you, I think, a fairly thorough summary of what's proposed, at least as it pertains to the general fund in particular. We do have in there general estimates on our core revenues and core expenses. You'll see that. I've got a summary chart of that a little bit later. It does speak to and provide justification and background on our 83 recommended decision packages. I'll say that again, 83 recommended decision packages. I think it is the most that I can recall in certainly my 16-year history. And it's really reflective of what we believe to be a budget that is focused on restoring lost services over the last few years during our budget sort of cutting environment, and really responding to what I think is this council, this community's desire to see additional things happen and happen more quickly. And you'll see in the budget as we go through it over the next several weeks, we have proposals to restore many of our lost staff members. And we have in certain areas, in areas that I think this council has identified as priority through our strategic plan, through referrals, through different actions, an effort to augment staff in functions that you'd like to see enhanced. And we'll go through that, as I mentioned later, as we get into the guts of it. We don't, in this document, have budget response reports. Those will fall, the first batch of budget response reports will be provided to you as part of your June 7th budget hearing materials. It will go into that agenda packet. And then we will slowly deliver additional budget response reports that we have not yet completed over the course of the June 14th and June 21st meetings. Next slide, please, Luke. I mentioned that we changed the criteria a little bit. I'm not going to read all this for you, but what I do want you to note is there are two particularly new focuses that we have in here. One, we have a criterion that discusses the restoration of lost positions. There's a whole category on that. There are a number of decision packages that speak to that issue. And that, as I mentioned, is really us trying to bring resources back online to build out services and respond to customer needs more acutely. And then another new area is this notion that we recognize what we heard from members of the public and the commissioners that participated in the budget input gathering stage. We had great feedback from our commissions. Many of their suggestions and recommendations are codified in our proposed decision packages in one way or another. But we also wanted to highlight those that may not have fallen in our more traditional categories as a standalone item. So you'll see that as a new category in the budget. It's new to the budget this fiscal year. The other small modification was the addition of a quality of life focus as part of our public health and safety criterion that we have historically had, where this council is recognizing that it's not just our traditional response to crime activities and the like, and our traditional safety response from a rescue and paramedic standpoint and fire suppression standpoint, but that this council in particular, this community has cited of late the need to focus on quality of life issues that are more code enforcement related, more park violation type activities, MSO work, the things that we do that is on a micro level, more specific to Redondo Beach, not necessarily to state penal code, but of interest to our folks, noise, things of that nature. So you'll see this budget react to that and try to get out in front of that with staff that will help support those initiatives longer term. Next slide, please, Luke. Really high level summary here. Hopefully it's legible as we try to figure out what fonts and colors work best on our beautiful big screen. You can see there we start, and this was really helpful this year. It was fortunate that we were able to start with this balance. We have $11 million at the start of the fiscal year that we have to recommend for appropriation. And really, as this council's aware, that's as a follow-up to the savings that was accrued through our refinancing of our pension debt and our old CalPERS unfunded accrued liability payments. We had a lot of residual bonds. We were able to use some of those for one-time initiatives at the start of the fiscal year. We made some adjustments at mid-year, but that residual funding, along with what has been 2 tranches of American Rescue Plan funding for COVID relief from the federal government, have really given us a very strong starting point as it pertains to fund balance. And it's good because it's allowing us to fund many of our one-time initiatives. It's allowing me to recommend to you for consideration a significant transfer of resources to our capital budget to actually effectuate one project in particular that we think is important given current circumstance. And it allows us to provide some bridge funding for us on ongoing decision packages, predominantly staff related, as we come into structural balance in what will be the fiscal year 2023-24. Our revenues, as you see there from a core standpoint, are a little over 101 million. Our expenditures from a core standpoint are just under 102 million. So we go into the year short about $600,000 on a structural basis. This is in large part because we are still missing over $3 million of what has been core normal transient occupancy tax driven primarily by the hotels on Marine Avenue. We have 3 hotels at that location. You've heard me say this in the past that generally spin off about $3 million a year to us. Right now, their TOT is being allocated to what is called an authority-funded reserve account that we pledged as part of background financing to when the original operator was looking to secure construction loans and build the project. We have an obligation through our commitments to set aside $3 million to what we call the authority funded reserve account. Right now, the TOT is accruing to that location in response to what occurred during COVID, which allowed the banks to actually trigger use of those funds that had already been populated in that account. So it's going to be another full fiscal year before we will see money accrue to the general fund from that location. But because we know that $3 million is solid, it's a very normal resource for us, we feel good structurally coming into balance in fiscal year 23-24. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the upcoming weeks when we get into the details. But in total, after all the proposed decision packages, after our core revenues and expenditures, and then our one-time recommendations, we still have available for consideration a little bit under $2 million, roughly $1.8 million in the proposed budget. We set some of that aside for the council's consideration, but also as a bit of a contingency to give us some flexibility as time evolves. We know right now with the nature of inflation and other things that are occurring that our construction costs in a lot of areas have gone up. We are constantly having to supplement and catch up in those areas. And in fact, the budget itself, through those decision packages, incorporates a number of inflationary, what we call mandated costs that have to be allocated in order to keep up with just current expenditure requirements from our core functions. So the budget is balanced. It leaves a little bit of residual funding available. It has significant, over $7 million of one-time recommendations that really, I believe, are responsive to community and council concerns. And it gives you a little bit of flexibility as you make final deliberations and consider this. Next slide, please, Luke. Over the next few weeks, this is our calendar. Tonight is really the introductory hearing. What's a little bit different tonight than what we've done in the past is usually this has just been a receive and file item as opposed to a notice public hearing. What we wanted to do this year is actually notice all 4 meetings. So anything that's stated tonight can actually accrue to the public record, gives the community a little bit more notice on what we're doing. We were able to do that through an advertisement, a small noticing advertisement in the Daily Breeze, in addition to our normal public noticing that we've done through the Easy Reader this year, where we actually ran a full-page ad that laid out our full schedule from now until June 21st. So hopefully the community has seen that. For those who are interested in the budget process, they know that over the next 5 weeks roughly, we'll be deliberating on it. And you can see the calendar here. Tonight's the introduction. Budget and Finance Commission will get its first review on the 26th. We'll be back here before the City Council with our initial public hearing on, really that'll be an operations focus. We'll be talking about our operating pro forma and what we're recommending. We'll get into the detail of revenue and expenses and our projections. On June 9th, the Budget and Finance Commission will have its second opportunity to review the budget and provide what will ultimately be their recommendation letter to all of you. We're going to present to the Harbor Commission on June 13th to give them a crack to look at some of our proposals. We'll be back here before you on June 14th at another hearing where we will focus on our capital improvement program and the projects in there. Also part of that presentation, so you are aware, are two specific conversations. One on the prospect of bonding, ultimately procuring additional bond resources and looking at whether or not we want to consider borrowing to fund or pre-fund some of our capital costs. And then secondarily, we will receive a presentation from Walker Engineering, who has done a contemporary review, structural engineering review of our pier parking structure, its condition, and they have ultimately made some recommendations to us as it pertains to next rehabilitation steps. And that's actually the largest single reason for allocation to the CIP this year from the general fund. It's for the rehabilitative parking structure project down at the waterfront. And then ultimately on June 21st, we'll be before you for consideration of adoption. And we will, at that point, hopefully move forward with an adopted budget that will tee us up for the July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2023 fiscal year. Next slide, please. So tonight, our recommendation is to simply open the public hearing, which I think you've done, or have we not actually formally done that yet? We do need to do that. We ask that you receive and file the document. It was posted yesterday online per charter. I have to deliver the budget to you by May 16th of every year. We were able to accomplish that last night via link. These documents have been printed and are available to the public and others electronically. We would also ask tonight if you have any additional direction on budget response reports that you provided. You have all been very good over the last several months making those referrals. So we have your prior suggestions in the queue, but if you have anything tonight that's come to mind, it would be a good time to suggest that to us. Not that we need any more, but if you have them, we're ready. And then ultimately that we ask that you continue the public hearing to June 7th so we can have our conversation extended. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
All right. That was motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 5-0.
Does that mean he has to do that presentation again?
Yeah, would you like me to start over?
No, I think we'll incorporate the presentation you
Half
just
speed.
gave into this public hearing. Is there any member of the public who wants to comment on the presentation that Mr. Wazansky just gave or the budget that we just received? All right. Any council members have any comments on this? Questions? Councilmember Lowenstein.
Thank you. Thank you to you and Jennifer for preparing this. It's a lot of work. Appreciate the time while we were at Beach Life that you were doing this.
Sorry, I had the window open. I was able to hear faintly what was happening down there.
Good. A couple questions. One is we finished mid-year at 13 million. We're now at 11.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, two changes. You appropriated a significant amount of money for the Barrel Street project to ultimately fund our delta there. And then there were additional draws on our ISF allocations that drew that figure down even lower. I will tell you the 11 million is fairly conservative. There is a chance that we'll close the fiscal year at a level higher than that. But rather than get too aggressive with that number, we settled on an $11 million figure that we felt is reasonable, ultimately be subject to whatever salary savings and the like will accrue. And as we know, we do have vacancies in the police department, which typically for us generates quite a bit of year-end fund. So it's possible that number will grow, but it was a fairly conservative projection in light of our changes with recent appropriations and the ISF change.
Okay. A couple of things that stand out to me. One is I did the calculation, and out of the total budget, there's 1.7% that is discretionary, basically. So the way I got that is 1.8 million divided by 102 million is 1.7. That's, even though we were looking at 13 million, all of a sudden now we have 1.7%. That's pretty low. Any comments there?
Well, no, I mean, at the end of the day, our charge is to propose to you what we think ultimately accomplishes your stated goals historically. We're going to encourage you to go through all of these decision packages, our capital recommendations. There may be things that you'd like to see us fund in a greater abundance. There are things you may want to redirect for other purposes. We hope that we've captured in large part what you view as important going forward, and this is our best recommended use of those funds. We could have left much of that money back, and clearly $4.5 million of that is really for one single project that you can obviously deliberate on. And we've laid out for you very clearly what those other one-time packages are. You certainly could deliberate on those as well. But we think as you go through the document, you're going to see that these recommendations are largely in line with your preferences and priorities. And to the extent that they're not, we'll adjust and we'll go from there.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up because that's exactly where I was going. The 4.5 million for peer parking, seismic retrofitting. Obviously, safety is important. And this is a multi-year project, so it's not just 4.5 million, right? It's okay.
Yeah, as you'll hear from Walker on the 14th, our needs there are much greater than 4.5 over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so I want us to think about this because it's a major commitment. Also, I want us to perhaps, and I may request when we get to the BRRs, that we look at a second opinion on this because that is a huge chunk of money. First, safety's first, of course, for everything. But that's a huge commitment. We might want to bond it, right? We might look at infrastructure bonds, right? To put it into, take it out of the general fund, that's a huge commitment. We have to decide that. And so it's interesting. Sometimes the harder choices are made when there's less money. I mean, when there's more money, then there's less money, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that's what we're going to face this year as a council is, saying yes to some things and saying no to certain things. The other concern I have is spending all of our money. There's rainy day funds, we have reserves, but there's also things that we might mid-year, a year or two down the road, might want to spend money on.
Absolutely. And I think it's a fair point. One thing I would note is there is no recommendation to touch any of our $5+ million CalPERS reserve account that we've historically used. You'll recall, you've been here for these decisions as a bit of a revolving door to balance year over year. So that $5 million is sitting there and is not recommended for allocation at this time. So you have that, and that goes above and beyond our contingency reserve, our 8.33% contingency reserve. So.
Right. And also, what I was happy to see is the replenishment of the Uplands Fund, as well as Tidelands funds, increased, I don't know if it's increased revenue, but at least, 7 point?
Yeah, we're seeing some improvement there, which is good. We're starting to come into structural alignment, operating revenues to expenses. I think we'll get closer as we move forward. There is still a little bit of deficit spending there, particularly after the decision packages. But we should begin to see additional revenues come online in the next couple of years.
Okay, great. So now is not the time to do BRRs, correct?
No, it certainly is. If you've got a few, we're happy to hear them.
I got about 50. Is that okay?
Yeah. All right. Well, let me get my pen.
I'm just kidding. One I would like to see is perhaps look at a second opinion from an engineering firm. I know that Walker's been very good to us.
We could bring you back a cost on another architectural or
I realize this could delay it, but we're talking about a major investment here. And, I've heard somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million. All
right.
So anyway, I just want us to perhaps look at what the cost would be for a second opinion.
Yeah, we could easily provide that as part of a budget response report on the 7th.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thank you,
I only
Councilor
had one.
Lowenstein. Councilmember Naraha, I'll get to you in 1 second. I thought that our charge here tonight would be kind of just receive and file this since we got it super late night last night. I'm not sure everybody had an opportunity to get into such a deep dive on it. But now that Councilmember Lowenstein brought up a $4.5 million expenditure on a parking structure and bonds, where are we on, thinking about bonds for the purpose of investing in our infrastructure in the city, which very, very much there are lots of things that need that kind of money, as far as, be it a police department, underground structure at the Triangle Lot in Riviera Village and the like.
Yeah, we're going to have a formal presentation on the 14th, our second hearing in June, where we focus on capital that talks about bond resources, what the annual debt service payment would be for various amounts of borrowing, whether it be 10 million, 20 million, 40 million, et cetera. It's important that we have those conversations in the context of operating budgets, because really when you borrow, you're making a structural expenditure commitment on a 25, 30-year basis. And it's important that we know, and you'll see in my message, I talk a little bit about not just what are known revenues to us over the next 2 years, but what are forecasted to be potential new revenues into the future. We talk a little bit about cannabis tax potentially if we adopt ordinances. We know we have the South Bay Galleria that's going to begin construction here this summer, and in a couple years should be up and operational, should be generating additional sales tax. The Legato project at some point will be complete, and it includes a new hotel that will easily generate $1 million plus a year for us in transient occupancy tax. There's a budget decision package you'll see for a recommendation for us to bring on a consultant to explore the possibility of creating a short-term vacation rental program, moving away from our current short-term rental ban and prohibition. That could generate $1 million plus a year in TOT. So I want to make sure we think about those revenues as we also think about additional deficit or structural expenditure spending. And we'll be talking about that on the 14th.
All right, thank you for that. I just wanted to know when we're going to discuss it, because I know that the interest rates keep going up and up and up, whereas, we could have borrowed money for free maybe at the beginning of the year. That's not the case anymore. But
it's true. It's gone up. The market has actually the bond market has expected the Fed's actions for some time. So the bond market, while we're seeing it on the mortgage side, the bond market has actually been out in front of that to some degree. So we haven't had as much slippage as it may appear as it relates to borrowing. But what's important for us, if we're going to borrow, is to know how we're going to use the money, right? We don't want to just borrow for the sake of borrowing. We want to borrow to spend and build.
And we could also buy the dip with the $4.5 million and maybe have $6 million next year. All right, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just so you guys know, I at the last ICA conference, I talked to actually our bond people, Stiefel, and they're actually selling our bonds out on the street. And I had a lengthy discussion with them on, because I told them I'm worried about exactly what we're talking about. And they said, don't worry about it, because it's essentially a 30-year bond. You buy a 10-year bond, you refinance in their 20 years. And so the rates have exactly what you just said, already priced in a long time ago. So you're not going to lose out on the higher numbers. So regarding the budget, thank you. 11:06 last night, got the email, sitting there on the couch doing stuff, and I was like, oh, look at that, nice. I've been a big proponent of updating the budget to be more line item, to be clear, more graphs, easier to read, easier to look at. I really appreciate the tremendous work to get to that point. The layout is better, and I really like how the BRRs are set up right now with the recommendations, the amounts. I used to do that privately, internally, right? And so now I have it there done for me already. Thank you very much. There's so much in here that has really changed from last year. I can tell just summarily going over it. Easier to read, easier to see. I sent you a text regarding, hey, this is how Manhattan Beach sends out their list, and you sent me, we had a conversation earlier about how we did, and you said it earlier today about how you put it in the Daily Breeze. You really involving the public. I watched you at the Preservation Commission, of all places, right? And you had a great conversation with the Preservation Commission about what to do for them, how much would it cost to do historic homes, and it was good input. You weren't expecting, I don't think, to have that kind of a conversation, but you did. And I appreciate you going to all the commissions. It's a lot of work out of your personal time. That's after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So It's definitely a turn in a direction that I have been focusing on and a proponent of, so thank you. I really appreciate that, and the staff for all the extra work that it takes. It's not just the same budget every single year. And I know the community is really going to appreciate the changes because they can easier figure out what's going on right from the beginning, right from the get-go. So it's a lot of work. I appreciate it. I, for one, am going to look back at old BRRs for the sake of saving time and knowing that things that we couldn't have done in years past, try to look at those. So my request would be to, because BRRs have come in at such a scattered time, can we get maybe a list of BRRs in a PDF or something of the last 3 or 4 years or something that's kind of looks at, hey, here's all the BRRs we've had every year, finalized total, and just dump it into one, one year's
You
worth.
would kind of give you a table of contents from the last 3-4 budgets, so you know at least what questions have been raised historically.
So last year, these are table of contents, year before that, table of contents, kind of look at that, because it gives a lot of good history, and I can see that, okay, well, we weren't able to do this project or that because of funding reasons. So that's what I want to kind of look at. Other than that, I don't want to take any more time other than, thank you guys very much for spending all the effort that you did on this. So I appreciate the effort and direction it's gone.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Nierenheim. Any public comment? Did we already take that? No public comment, no e-comments? All right, anybody in the public wish to speak on the budget? No. All right. No more council members. Is there a motion to receive and file?
No, to continue.
And continue the public hearing.
Second. Well, who made the motion?
I made the motion.
I'll second that.
There you go.
Bookends.
We got that motion by Councilmember MD, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, on to the next item. We'll go to N1. Discussion and possible action on submittal of a letter to Los Angeles County Supervisor Holly Mitchell and LA County Metropolitan Transportation Authority regarding the Metro C Green Line Extension to Torrance project. All right, what do we got?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This is a continued item from a couple of weeks ago at the council meeting. If you recall, last year when we were applying to the scope for the draft EIR for the Metro Green Line project, we had provided a comment letter. And then on March 15th, there was a referral to staff to kind of refresh that and give the update to our new representative of the county supervisor, Holly Mitchell. And so we started to work on that. There was the first April walking tour with Metro. And I think that at the last council meeting when we were going through this, there was the interest in getting that additional input from the public for the walking tour that occurred last Wednesday. And so we went on that tour. Luke and I both attended that tour and definitely wanted to make sure that we incorporated any additional comments. So before you tonight is the updated draft letter to Supervisor Mitchell. So if you had any additional comments or changes, or if you wanted to move forward with that.
All right, thank you, Director Forbes, and thank you, Mr. Smoot, for coming out last week to the Metro Walk on Ruxton. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I actually attended that walking tour as well with Brandy and Luke, and I believe Mr. Obaji was at Breakwater Village at the same time. It was really enlightening. There was a lot of concern from residents, obviously. And then one of the things that really struck me is somebody said, if you're moving the freight train line over, how far is there going to be a retaining wall? And if there's a retaining wall, how far is it going to be from my yard? And the answer was, yes, we're moving it over. There will be a retaining wall and it will be 5 feet from somebody's yard. That is less than the distance from here to that podium. a freight train will be riding along on the other side of that wall. Think about that. And then you think about those train cars, light rail cars going every 7 minutes past somebody's house. It's an abomination. I can't even believe we're even here discussing this. It's the wrong place to move it. It's clear that the residents that bought there did not think that Metro would be running down through their backyards every 7 minutes. I'm not even mentioning Lawndale, where it runs through there, where they're going to trench part of it. I think it's incredible that we're even at this stage. We really have to have a unified front, and I think we do with our council members here and the mayor that opposes this, and that we need to do everything we can to push it in the right place where it needs to be, away from houses, down the median of Hawthorne, where the red cars used to run, which will feed the Galleria, everybody from workers and employees that work at the Galleria to people that are visiting the Galleria. That's where it belongs. The stop would be on the right of way would be neighborhood homes otherwise. That's the wrong place to have a Metro stop. The stop should be in front of the Galleria. It's going to be a major generator of traffic in terms of foot traffic and revenue for our city. That's where it belongs. And I think it's best for everybody to be that way. And I think by the end of the day, it's going to cost almost equally. I know there's a lot of talk about the road being the less expensive route, but by the time they do all the remediations and everything else and take care of all the residents by running it through the row, it's going to be very expensive that way too. So I really think we all are in agreement. I would hope that we can also perhaps invite Supervisor Mitchell, maybe even Supervisor Hahn, to do a walking tour along that. They're very receptive as board members to Metro. And I thank you all for putting in the effort, Brandy, for coming out, listening to people, and also putting together this letter, because that may not be my backyard, but that doesn't mean I'm not concerned. I'm really concerned about it for residents. It would be horrible to live next to that year in and year out. So thank you.
All right. Can I share my screen, please, Madam Clerk? 2B. All right, so this is Breakwater Village. This is where the last walk is. This is my second or third walk with Metro. But in this room, you had somebody stand up and say, every single person here is against you running the Metro train in our backyard. And we have never, ever agreed on one thing altogether. So I could tell you guys a lot, many reasons why this Metro train should not run through the Redondo Beach right-of-way, which is people's backyards, but I actually put it in this 5-6-page letter, which thank you, staff, for working with me, or for at least, receiving my comments and feedback and the like. And I think we made it with input from the residents, the best letter it could be. So I'd make a motion to go ahead and, we can stop sharing this, to go ahead and approve this letter to be transmitted to the supervisors and the Metropolitan Authority, and I'd hope that we can get unanimous council support and signature on it.
Can I make it a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Was it mentioned, I didn't see it in there, what I was talking about, the 5 feet from the retaining wall from somebody's yard? I don't know.
So
was that actually mentioned in the letter? Because I didn't see it. And that's from Metro. That's not.
So my understanding is that they are moving and tell me if you guys understand differently, but they are moving the train tracks 12 feet over. They estimated, we did go up at Breakwater Village. We went up in the staircase with the engineer, looked down at it, and he said, you're moving it 12 feet over. It's still going to be, 15 feet away from the wall that's there. It's not going to be 5 feet away from the retaining wall. I don't think, at least, that's not what we.
It was actually on the other side of the right-of-way when we were on that portion of the tour.
Okay.
They asked how close that wall would be to the
the
back
residents that are down-
property.
Residents
Yeah,
that are there on
on
Condon.
the east side of
Yeah.
the right-of-way.
On Condon and Pomona.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know that we did get that in there, but we could certainly, if you wanted
Add that?
to
I
add
think
that.
so. 5 feet's a very
Yeah.
Right.
limited amount of
All right.
distance.
I'll accept that amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Are you the seconder?
Yes. Oh, second.
Yeah.
Seconder accepts that. So, all right, all in favor? Oh, public comment, sorry.
I have something to say real quick before.
Go for it.
Thank you. Just, I don't want to reiterate my comments from last time. I was going to tell everyone that the Board of Supervisors is made up of 5 supervisors. It's not just 1, not just 2. And this thing has to pass, right, by majority of 3. Just like you come down here and try to get us to get to do things and say things and move certain direction, we have certain ideas. There's no reason why you need to concentrate just on 1 supervisor. There's 4 other ones there, and I can't stress this enough. Every single supervisor is just as important as the other one. And while we have 1 in our backyard, the other ones are going to be voting on this plan and reaching out, contacting them, and letting them know your concerns are all valid for every single supervisor, not just Supervisor Mitchell. I can't reiterate that enough. I can't say that enough. I can't push that forward enough. Don't just concentrate on 1. You're missing an opportunity with 4 other supervisors, which do listen. So, and especially Supervisor Hahn, she used to represent us. So there you go.
Thank you, Councilmember Nierenheim. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I'll just say, let's expand upon that because the Metro Board is far bigger than 5. So the focus has to be on every Metro Board member going forward. And for some of us, we've talked with other board members that have been typically friendly to South Bay issues. So it's building a coalition of Metro Board members that's going to be key. This council has been consistent on this from the get-go. So probably about 4 years ago when we started community outreach, the public has been consistent on how they feel. Our initial letters were consistent on how we feel. So, but now is the time as they are completing the EIR to really step it up. And we have to do it in conjunction with Lawndale and Torrance because they're all 3 cities part of this extension. And probably our better bet is focusing on Torrance because Lawndale would just prefer to have the entire project scrapped. And so I think if Torrance and us were to join together in promoting a Hawthorne alignment, I think that would go a long way with bringing along other elected officials who serve at the Metro Board level. But it's going to take a concerted effort for many months going forward. So that's all.
And to the points just raised by Councilmember Nierenheim and Horvath, where we did have a meeting, Councilmember Horvath and I did have a meeting with our city manager and others, Director Saman, with Supervisor Mitchell's staff. And it seemed like they really got why Hawthorne was the better way to go, increased ridership, so on and so forth, which is why we ended up adding to this letter a CC to the entire Metro Board and added on Supervisor Hahn, because even though she's not our supervisor anymore, because when I saw her last, of course, every time I see these supervisors, this is in my district, I bring it up to them. And Supervisor Hahn would say, why would we go down Hawthorne when we've got the right of way? We own the right of way. So, and that's when I realized we got more work to do on Supervisor Hahn, even if she's not our supervisor on this. We've got to send the message that when you're doing this multi-billion-dollar infrastructure project, cheapest is not the way to go. That is not where you get the best product. So, yeah, thank you guys for that. So, all right, Mr. Zerlett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. I find this letter to be just this far away from being nothing short of political garbage. Most of the things that you say in the letter, you do not point to any specific information to validate your opinions. And this is an opinion letter. Now, I don't have a problem with opinions right now. You should be directing this to the EIR with all your questions. That's where this should be directed. But let me point out a couple of things. Firstly, most of these residents who are against it, and you continue to fearmonger with them about the horrible nature of what might happen in their backyard, none of them took advantage of the Metro trip out to the Gold Line to see what people out there say about the rail out there that was put in there right in the middle of their neighborhoods and how it has reacted. I'm glad to hear you finally went on some of these tours. I was on every one of the first 4 tours, and I will tell you that the mayor of Torrance was on one, and you got a big uphill fight. Torrance doesn't want it down the middle of that boulevard because the sound coming off of that down the middle of the boulevard is going to expand well beyond the infrastructure that is there. Also, I feel that this letter does not in any way, it ignores many of the things that we have done. It doesn't say that we have spent multiple millions of dollars, both federally generated and my tax dollars, on building a transportation center. And none of your letter really addresses what it means to be a rider. I doubt that most of you have ever ridden on Metro, whether a bus or a train, because if you are a rider, you want connectivity. And what more is connectivity than a multimodal transit center already under construction here in the middle of Redondo Beach? You have not proposed anything in this letter that addresses the safety of somebody in the middle of a 10-lane street elevated 20 feet up. You like to say that this is going to improve revenues. Garbage. There's no stop in Lawndale. It's not going to improve any of the revenues along the boulevard, no more than it going down the right of way. That's just in the back of the Galleria, not in the front of the Galleria. You don't propose a bridge coming off of that station to protect the residents or riders as they go across that street. You don't talk about anything about even creating a pathway through through multiple parking lots where people need to be safe to get to any connections that they're making on the rest of the system. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. And good news about Torrance is they're going to get a new mayor very soon. So maybe the new mayor will have a different opinion. All right. And as to your comment about, our opinions in this letter, the truth is that the Metro doesn't really put out a ton of fact sheets, and the only way that you gather information about this project is by being on the ground, speaking to Metro staffers, asking them questions, and hearing what they say in response. So we don't have the citations I'd like to have in a legal brief here, but these are a lot of the statements that Metro staff have said to us and residents, and it's important for us to get them, as I've said before, up to the supervisors who are making decisions on this, because they may not be aware of what the people on the ground are saying. All right, with that, I think we're ready for a vote unless there are more comments.
Are there any more comments here?
Oh, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and all the council. My name is Barry Ogle. I live on Condon Avenue, and I was on the last walking tour. I didn't know of many others. I got thrown off of their email notices. I have engineering twice. I am an engineer. I was an engineer with the BNSF Railroad, and I earned an engineering degree as well, having worked at Hughes Aircraft. We have a 60-degree hill behind our house, and it backs up to where they're going to put the first Metro line. And underneath it is an oil pipeline that's been exposed a number of times over the years due to rain. It just washes down in the back in 63, 64. It was so bad that the city, the county, and the railroad and the oil companies all had a fight over who would clean up the backyards. And it came in the back windows of the houses. My wife has been in that house since 1963, and that's why we know this. But I like the idea that everybody's on board with keeping it down on Hawthorne Boulevard And I don't think our previous speaker had his information right. The sound will dissipate in a bigger area out there on Hawthorne Boulevard, running it down the red car line. Again, back to the 60 degree and that 5-foot right-of-way that was mentioned. That would be on the east side where we're at. And I got our planning from city plans, and I get to extend my house out another 5 feet that wasn't originally put in there when they put in the wall behind the house. So I can run back 5 more feet. But that 60-degree hill, when they come by there, if they don't have a good retaining wall that's structurally built and sunk into the ground a good 20 feet or more, I would think it's going to come down. There is sinkholes that developed up there around the Breakwater Village area at the south, yes, at the south end.
The Ruxton, yeah.
Yes, and if that continues, you know, when we put up the light rail, it wouldn't be good. It would cause a freight train to go in, not the metro links, unless of course that area is all over that way as well. The freight train that is considered other than main line, they are not allowed to go beyond 15 or 20 miles an hour. And crashing into the walls at that speed, I don't think they'll take out too many. It'll do some damage. And all the engineers and conductors on that line I've known for years, and they're well versed in taking care of hazmat spills. Not actually doing it, but they have all the paperwork there, and they can relay this to the fire departments and such as. And in regards to my 2 degrees, engineering and engineering, if there's something I can do to help, I would love to volunteer and help out with this to make sure that we get it off of the right-of-way and over to Hawthorne Boulevard. There's a lot of pros and cons, but as you mentioned, it's not the easiest way to go cheap down the right-of-way. It would be better on Hawthorne Boulevard. There's so much to say for it. And I see I've run over my 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, sir. Good to see you again.
Sir, I'm sorry. Can you go back to the mic for the record and give us your name? I don't think you're on mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Barry Ogle, and I'm on Condon Avenue in District 4.
Yep. Good to see you, Mr. Ogle. And I'll take you up if I have any engineering questions.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, Wayne Craig, a resident of Redondo Beach. I went to the last walking tour, and again, I was glad to see, we have multiple council members there. Brandy and Luke, I know you were there too. It was great seeing you all see firsthand. And I'm very pleased that the city council, at least we have one now that's unified, is doing a very smart thing, and is being proactive and not howling at the moon. That's probably what happened in prior councils. Anyway, I'm glad we're being effective with that. One of the things that I saw in this last tour was quite frightening was, the sinkhole they mentioned at Ruxton. And the reason why it's there is because there's no oil pipeline there, or some type of oil pipeline. They were doing drilling, and either through a combination of the drilling or trains or both, I don't know, it's exposed. And the people that are living there, their front yard is unusable. They got 5 feet of their front yard of their condo. They can't even walk into their front doors. Can you imagine that? Any of you here or anyone watching, that you now have no use of your own property that you've owned, and this person who's lived there hasn't been able to use it for almost a year, hasn't been fixed yet. Now, obviously, there's some geological issues that need to be addressed, and some really serious problems that are going to continue there. And this isn't the only sinkhole. Other residents, I think Ms. Mitchell has had the same problem in her property in the backyard. So this is an ongoing problem. Now, how are they going to fix that? Is it going to be band-aiding it, patching it, saying it's all good, and then we have a nice disaster when a train derails? I think it's a horrible thing to do. And lastly, I'd like to play back again. Someone mentioned before about being on the gold line. Well, I have a property I'm selling that's right next to the gold line. And I can tell you what it sounds like from 60 feet away. That'll be every 7 months. Almost 120 times a day. So, yeah, I've seen the gold line, and I know how loud it is, and I know people are really concerned about it. And I'm glad that as a council, we're unified, the mayor is unified, and we're doing everything we can. And as Councilmember Nair and I have said, don't limit it to just one or two Board of Supervisors, send them all letters. And I think that's an important thing we need to do as a community. This is an issue that affects all Redondo residents, and we should all be helping our fellow Redondo residents in making this move to the raised line along Hawthorne Boulevard where it should go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any other speakers?
I'd like to.
At this point, I don't see any in Zoom. I don't know if anybody would like to speak on this. Oh, here we go. Sarah Mann.
Sarah Mann?
Yes.
Yes, good evening, Sarah Mann from Breakwater Village, 2750 Artesia Boulevard. Last week, Wednesday, as you've heard, the residents of Breakwater Village had their first opportunity to meet with staff from the Metro District and share how building the sea line on the right-of-way would impact their lives. We sincerely appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Obaji joining us at this meeting. Breakwater Village is a senior condominium complex that has 191 owned units. We have over 300 residents ranging in age from 55 to 98 years old. Built in 2007, 2008, Breakwater Village is a beautiful complex. It's well-maintained and it's very peaceful. Our residents bought into Breakwater Village for this ambiance. The right-of-way is on the east side of our building. We have over 75 residents living within 15 feet of the right-of-way, meaning their beds are 15 feet from the right-of-way. Moving the freight train closer to our property and adding the two light rail lines that will run every 6 to 12 minutes over 20 hours a day will irreparably harm our community from both the vibration and the constant noise. We invite all the council members, Supervisor Mitchell and her staff, to visit Breakwater Village and meet with members of our community to see for yourself why we choose to spend this chapter of our lives here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. Thanks for your leadership there at Breakwater Village.
Okay, we have a couple e-comments.
First comment is submitted by Nikki Negrete Mitchell. I support the letter. I'm thankful and appreciate the steadfast commitment to this cause. We need your strong voice to point out these glaring problems with the right-of-way alignment, whether at grade or subterranean in any shape or form. We need your strong voice to advocate for us, Redondo Beach citizens, and for our city as a whole and for our environment. What an eye-opener this has been, knowing since we bought our house 15 years ago, the ground supporting the rails just feet from our homes is loose and unstable. We've seen firsthand what it does to our private infrastructure and can only imagine, given the type of space we have and the open, close proximity, how disruptive and life-altering this would all be. Our future depends on this decision. It's been nearly impossible to be heard about all of this. That is until now with your support. There are a lot of retiring and already retired seniors in the single-family home section who are counting on their homes to be peacefully enjoyed for the rest of our lives as nest eggs. We too will suffer the consequence of loss, not being able to just pick up and go. We're all in the same boat. There are a lot of young families as well, here to provide a stable home to raise their young children in this fine school district. We did the same for our daughter, but we started older, and we all worked so hard for this. Most of us cannot just sell our homes and get the equivalent elsewhere, much less upgrade. It's a sign of the times. We all need for this to be done correctly, and that is to use the Hawthorne elevated route for the Green Line, Sea Line extension to Torrance. From the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate this effort. Thank you, Nikki, Kevin, and Gianna. The other comment submitted by Jeanette Kurth was already read under the item D1 when Ms. Supervisor Mitchell was on line. So I'm not going to read it again.
All right. Thank you. No, that's good. Thank you. And just an FYI, Madam Clerk and Deputy Clerk, when a speaker is done, unless I have the presentation screen up, I'm not seeing the clock. I'm usually still on the agenda screen, so the PC screen. So you can call time when somebody's done, please. That would be appreciated. All right, we'll take a vote on that. If there are no further public comments, to transmit the letter with some amendments mentioned by Councilmember Lowenstein, everybody's signature. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Any against? Nope, that passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for supporting D3, D4. All right, moving on to N2. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the request for proposal for the solicitation of design firms for the renovation and rehabilitation of the Seaside Lagoon.
Yes, good evening again. I will cover this tonight. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, Greg's home, not feeling 100%. He is on Zoom for any particular questions if needed. But in short, what we're doing tonight is we've brought back to you a built-out request for proposal that would ultimately seek and solicit input from the architectural community, most notably in the area of aquatic design and landscape design. And we would seek quality firms to create for us final design drawings as well as construction plans and specifications for a rehabilitated Seaside Lagoon. We expect that to be a fairly robust process. Our goal is to try to seek as many quality international firms, national firms as possible. Greg has been working with various architects to identify sites where we can post this RFP when it goes live to try to draw them in. You might recall that back in the fall, we brought a couple of proposals from local firms to potentially advance this, and ultimately the council felt that this is such an important facility that we go out worldwide effectively and bring in the best quality firm that we can find. The RFP doesn't really specify what the final design of the lagoon should or shouldn't be. It doesn't frame it in any finite way. It really just alludes to a process, and that is to use the information that's been gathered through our King Harbor amenities planning effort as a bit of a basis. You know, our ultimate goal with that plan is to set the chessboard, the framework for the amenities that will ultimately be constructed in the harbor, really, and site the facility in its final location. What this designer would do is come in, work with the community, work with the Harbor Commission, work with the council to create final design drawings, and then ultimately plans and specifications once the community and the council, Harbor Commission and council sign off on that final design concept. The rough drawings that you've seen in the King Harbor amenities plan that have come out, and Luke just popped one of them up, those aren't meant to be the ultimate reconstructed facility. Those are really more just for dialogue than anything else. It's allowed us to gather some basic feedback on the community. Does the community want an active facility? Does it want a passive facility? Does it want a combination of the two? Does it want to have a large grass space that could be used for special events? Does it want to focus more on year-round aquatics amenities? Those are the kinds of, that's the kind of input we've sought through that process. This designer comes in with a true aquatics background and says, okay, community, if you want this, you have to use these general spatial requirements. You've got to build this kind of infrastructure. Here's what you can and can't do in final design. Make a decision. You want to do this on an interactive special event basis. Here's the basic infrastructure we would recommend you build out. Here's how we would suggest that you create flexibility into the future. So that's really, to me, the truer design effort. What we've been experiencing locally is more high-level concept work to elicit conversation. So this is an RFP that's open-ended. It actually solicits from the proposers how they would go about creating the design process, what they would suggest that we do. It really speaks to the references and qualifications. This is about identifying and selecting the best aquatic architectural firm we can find, more than it is creating a finite scope of work for how we want to design the lagoon. So that's just the takeaway I want you all to have tonight. When we do get these proposals back, our suggestion would be to work with the Harbor Commission, ultimately start to frame the final contract scope of work, make sure they're deeply involved in that. But we're ready to go. I think this council's eager to get out there and see what these aquatic firms can bring to the table for us and make a selection and go forward. As you know, the state gave us $10 million to ultimately build this facility. That's not going to be enough if we want a full boat reconstructed lagoon. Is it enough if we have to fall back to a more of a traditional rehabilitation effort? I don't know, maybe. And that's ultimately what this designer would help us determine. We've mentioned in the RFP that we want to ultimately create plans for a brand new reimagined facility in the eyes of the council, the community, the commission, et cetera. And then also provide for us a rehabilitation of existing in the event that we just can't afford to do the more grandiose plans. So that's really where we're at. This is the first step to soliciting quality firms. And then the real work begins when those proposals come back and we have to make a selection and then go forward with the final scope of work.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And thanks for, I guess, hightailing this. First, a critique that I've gotten from folks, especially those on the Harbor Commission, is that the Harbor Commission didn't get to opine on this. right? So I'll leave that though to the South Redondo folks as far as what they want to do, because it's not my backyard. The other point is that obviously I had an opportunity to see at Beach Life Alan Sanford and speak to him a bit about this item when it came up. And I think as much as you've heard me say, I want us to get more out of Beach Life as a city directly, we can't deny that Beach Life is what, and his project is what allowed us to see what was possible at that site in a way that, probably nobody ever imagined before. So, but what I think, what his concern was when he saw this agenda item is that it disqualifies his firm, for example, from competing for this if they did want to put in a submission, because they're not an aquatics design firm. And they could always team up with an aquatics design firm. So I'm not sure, to the extent that we're willing to we're wanting to get the maximum interest, maybe we just open it up to all firms, as long as all architectural firms or design firms, as long as they incorporate, the aquatic component to it. The second comment I had is if you could put back up the picture that you did have. Because I actually gave this some thought as I sat there at Beach Life. Let me see. Is that? All right. So as you sit at Beach Life, or you sit in this space, what's beautiful about it what's cool about it is all the palm trees that are around, right? That you see all these palm trees right next to the water. It's cool. But what did we realize is palm trees aren't actually doing anything except for satisfying our vanity for pretty things. They're not really doing anything as far as putting shade, putting shade in and the like. With these palm trees put in here in the parking lot, I feel like we'd be potentially precluding a Beach Life from occurring, or at least interfering with how they roll out their green whatever. Second thing is, I'm not sure that we should be encouraging new designers to put in more palm trees.
Yeah,
as beautiful as they are, I just don't think they're really doing much for us environmentally, shade-wise.
Right,
So.
no question. I think there have been a lot of remarks when SWA's floated different concepts. Why are you putting grass there? I think there's too much focus on what they're really trying to do here, as it's not meant to be specific. It's meant more to be a narrative and an illustrative of what could happen. We certainly wouldn't recommend putting palm trees in the middle of a facility that right now is a great multi-purpose opportunity for a special event venue. Is there a way to line certain components of it in a way that still would be functional with an event like that? Sure, there probably is. And I think this community always wants to add greenery when we can. So they're not going to take the SWA plan and refine it. They're going to take the written narrative that the community has provided for us as it pertains to preferences and uses in the facility, and use that as the basis for how to begin to construct the design. So I think a lot of times these high-level concepts, people start to look in on a micro level. That's not really what they're meant to be. They're meant to be conversation starters, not final design.
Very cool.
But that's an obvious point, and certainly we wouldn't want to impact the multi-purpose ability of this facility long-term.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Thank you as the South Redondo. It's your Seaside Lagoon as well, too. It is, and districts. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. It's their rough concepts. Just a quick comment, I don't love huge grassy areas in the middle of a drought. I don't think it's a good idea. And it's only getting worse. And we've already talked about trees. I was going to ask you as well, what are we doing with the Harbor Commission?
This was you might recall, a specific strategic plan item to come back with the RFP and get this thing moving. I really think we always welcome the Harbor Commission's input. We obviously go to them as much now as we ever have before, if not more so. And we certainly see the Harbor Commission being a big part of the ultimate scope of work with the final design firm, making sure that it's laying out a process that everybody is supportive of. I see that being when the commission really gets involved here. This is us just releasing a document, and unless there's specific criterion or just a general solicitation here that has anybody concerned, I think the commission will be very valuable for us as we get into selection and scope of work.
Okay, thank you. And then as Mr. Abaji had mentioned, do you go with an aquatic design firm or do you go with a general design firm? And I'm a little bit split on it because I really see the area as aquatics focused. That being said, it's multi-purpose, right? You've got concerts there. We didn't even talk about this, we could have a teen center. You know, kids in South Redondo don't have a teen center. That's a place where kids could go on a Friday night. We talked about all kinds of things. And so I'm a little concerned, as much as I love pools and aquatic centers, I'm a little concerned about limiting that area just to aquatic design type groups. And so I think we might be surprised if we go to a general design group of things we hadn't thought of outside the box, outside the scope of just a swimming facility. So I actually think that that's a great idea. As Mr. Abaji said, I think not just because of what Mr. Sanford had mentioned, but that is precious land. I mean, there's not a lot of opportunities right next to the ocean to have a park, and that is our most visited park, and we could really make it something special. I'm just concerned about it just being, a swimming area and nothing more.
Yeah, I think we all share that concern. I think we all view this as a multi-purpose facility. And really, if you look at the RFP itself, there's nothing that would prevent a generalist from applying here and making a bid. Okay. We're ultimately going to have to determine the technical competence as we see it being accretive. I think ultimately the firm or firms that can mash those two concepts together and provide expertise in both are going to, I think, rise to the top of the analysis here. We're not limiting anybody in this exercise. I think what we've always felt, though, is that the driver of the cost of the facility and what ultimately creates the most constraints physically is the aquatics amenity, because it comes with, as you well know, a certain supporting infrastructure that requires decking. You've got different bather load, restroom requirements. You've got, chemical storage. You've got other operational requirements that come with a pool that don't necessarily come with a park. Right. So that's a technical element. And as we discussed in the fall, we want to make sure that the designer really is adept in modern, really innovative aquatic facilities, because building a zero depth entry that has a relaxed feel but could also provide potentially for year-round swimming activities through traditional lanes, and then yet still can be adapted in the summertime for some more advanced recreational play. Not every firm's going to be able to help you with that, right? So I think that's why there's this sense that aquatics are important, because it's probably the most complicated element of the project.
And I would hope that if a general design group is involved with that they would sub out that part of it, right? Yep. Because that happens.
Or vice versa, right? You got an aquatic group that's going to sub out to a more experienced special event landscape operator. It could go both ways, right?
So I don't know if you caught that, but I would agree with you about this, but it sounds like based on this potential RFP that this could be open to all types of design groups.
Yeah, and if you want us to make sure we go back through this RFP before the release and make that abundantly clear, we're happy to do that. I think it is there. It's certainly going to come down to our advertisement solicitation that's going to drive interest, and we can make that case in that document as well.
All right, sounds good. Councilmember Narenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First of all, you're one voting member of the five of us, so you're welcome to have.
I know, but whether, for example, whether it's going to go to Harbor Commission or we're going to pass it right now is going to be up. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to make. It's up to you guys. I'll let you lead me on that.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I don't want to hold this thing up anymore, but I also want to get everyone's input as much as possible on this. And while I do agree with the idea of multi-use, first and foremost is going to be the Seaside Lagoon and the water area of the Seaside Lagoon. To me, that is the number one. So a multi-use facility and somebody who's aquatic based shall take precedence over, in my opinion, over other uses. And can we overlay a stage or something over that water space? Absolutely. Let's have that integrated. But the technical abilities of a design firm are going to be based upon the aquatic feature. So to me, that's going to be the heart of what we're doing moving forward. And of course, now our LCP, demands that we keep the same water area coverage, the same. Now I'm going to, you're actually answered my next question in the budget, which was next time the Harbor Commission sees meets, which is June 14th for them.
Yeah, June 13th, I think, Monday the 13th. Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, maybe we have a special meeting or something, they could discuss the budget as well if it was too late, but now they have plenty of time to meet and talk with both. Is there a way that they could review this, make some inputs and or changes, and if the changes are minor, we can have it put on the consent calendar, or just go to directly to the consent calendar for the week thereafter? For us, or that be a little bit too much? I mean, and that's also going to be in the middle of a budget season as well. I'm just looking for different inputs.
I know where you're going with that. I can understand it. I think practically, if we took it to them truly to bless the RFP, we would probably be back to you with the final version in the first meeting of July. So we would be, 6 weeks delayed. What I can commit to is we certainly, again, I think we can involve the Harbor Commission as we bring in proposals, as we think about methodology, as we think about scope of work for the design. I really think that's, to me, going to be the biggest part of the conversation is exactly, what the community outreach program is going to look like. What in a finite detail, how do we want to inform the consultant on what design elements to study first? That's, I think, where really the value is. I mean, an RFP that determines criterion for selection and talks about who we're soliciting to, I mean, all help is welcome. I just don't know how much the document changes in that dialogue. It's not set in stone as is. It's a fairly open-ended solicitation right now. Really, to me, the harder lift is going to be with the scope of work in the final contract. I mean, that's where the rubber's really going to meet the road. But we can, if you'd like, we can take it to them. It means we probably realistically get this out on the streets in July rather than this month.
Right. So you kind of answered it. So what's the scope of this work that we're talking about? Who really put the scope of work together? It's staff with the input of all of our comments and council and commission and prior, and it's open enough moving forward that if we were to choose, let me summarize it this way. This RFP really is, we're getting information back from people who would like to design and put input on this and create a program to grab community input for design down in the Seaside Lagoon.
Correct. And ultimately what they're coming to us with is their history and experience to convince us that they're the right firm. We're seeking an expert to help us actually design this. We're not telling them what to design and put it on paper. That's not where we're at in this process. And I think if there's an expectation that we're handing them a concept and it's like, here's the concept, you're designing to this concept, that's anything but what's occurring here. We're really saying, here's what's been contemplated in the past. Here's what we've heard through our outreach efforts to date. Those are foundational to the work product, but ultimately you're going to go through a dedicated community outreach schedule. You're going to go through Harbor Commission review, and you're going to go through City Council review before we finalize a design, and then you're going to prepare construction drawings.
So this has nothing to do about design. This has nothing to do about the requirements of what the Seaside Lagoon is and what it shall be in the future and what it could do in the future. This is just about, hey, we're seeking input from companies to have prior experience in this area, primarily aquatic, but if you've done other things, that's great. Throw it all in here. Here's our basic list of items that we've put together so far, and we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, it alludes to the narrative that we've heard, right? Possible passive aquatic space, a more active recreational aquatic space, a multi-purpose venue. It alludes to all the broad terms that we've always had. What we actually tell them to design in its finality is going to depend on the firm and what they suggest to us, right? What we should be focused on.
Part of the core feature that I'm seeing here, because we have made certain decisions and not to do certain decisions in other venues, other items, is because the harbor amenities plan has not been finished yet. Do we have the confidence that they are going to be done on time in July?
Oh, I think if not July, certainly August, they'll be done before this firm is contracted with. I'm fairly certain of that. I mean, we're going to have this out on the streets for at least a good month. We'll be evaluating proposals for another month. We'll be kicking them around. There'll probably be an opportunity to dialogue with the commission, certainly the council. We won't recommend a final design firm to you, I'm sure, until at least September just on a practical basis. SWA should be either complete or just about complete at that point. So they would be coming on right when the amenities plan would be theoretically approved by council.
So, and again, we're not making any decisions based upon what the Seaside Lagoon shall be or could be or will be. We're just saying, hey, get us some input from a company, give us your resume essentially. This is what we're looking to do in terms of this is our open space area. And if and Harbor Amenities plan's not going to be done anyways.
And we want their expertise. I mean, a true an international aquatics design firm is going to actually help us, I think, imagine possibilities there that we haven't really flushed out yet. I mean, we talk about it, we all see it in our own way, but these folks theoretically come on board and say, oh, have you seen this facility in the Galapagos Islands? Have you seen this facility in wherever it is? Ideally not a sandals resort, but have you seen these types of imaginative places? And we've designed them, we've built them, we know how they work. This could work well here, this couldn't. I mean, we're seeking expertise here that we haven't brought on yet. And it's not to say that it's not going to foundationally be built in what we've heard, thus far. It probably will in a large part, but this is going to get us to that more refined level that we haven't experienced yet.
Yeah. So here's where I stand on this. I'll resurrect the decision on because this came up the last week on the pier, the sports fishing pier. It was a bad decision because to not rebuild the sports fishing pier or spend the $600,000 to fix it because it was a short-term fix. And that's put us back a tremendous amount in the harbor by a long time, many years for many different aspects. I don't want to pigeonhole us by a couple months. I'd rather just start moving this forward. I'm satisfied enough, trusting you enough and understanding that there is enough. We're just grabbing the information now from different companies to see where we're going to go. We're getting their resumes essentially. When we're getting their resumes, what we want to do with the Seaside Lagoon, we don't even know yet. We don't even know what we're doing with the harbor. And that's, I think, a key component moving forward. We want to be able to step quickly from step to step to step, not take 3, 4, 6 months of time. We don't have the time. We want to start moving forward. And I think this is going to be good for us to start moving ahead quicker. Yeah. So I see the value with the Harbor Commission putting it there, but I don't see there's enough value to let them look at it and have more input. They're going to have plenty more moving forward.
I can commit to you if it's important in the council, and I think it is, and we would be happy to do it, is we will bring an item to the commission that talks about kind of how we want to go about analyzing these firms, what we're looking for, what the sort of thought process is on scope of work. We'd be happy to do that while we're out on the streets here. And we can seek input from the commission to help us build that final document and recommendation. I can commit to you that we'll do that. I would like us to get going.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, have it hit the streets.
All right, let public comment and anyone else there.
Let's see, back to PC. Any of you have your hand up? Nope. All right, public comment. Board Member Strutzenberg. I know, you're here as Rolf Strutzenberg, not as board member.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Rolf Strutzenberg, Redondo Beach resident. Love the ideas and the concepts, and it's basically an open-ended thing as far as what kind of design inputs you would take and so forth. Going back a couple of years, one of the constraints on this was that and I saw in the admin report that no matter what the direction of the design goes, that it would have to eliminate the outfall and go to a closed loop system, which is great to eliminate the outfall. It's been problematic. We constantly go through fines with
fines and
fight it and get them reduced from billions of dollars to a few $100,000. Anyway, my understanding from talking about then assistant manager, city manager Bosansky a couple of years ago was that the intake is from AES, and AES has the intake permit. So when AES goes away, the intake permit would go away, and it's no small task to get an intake permit if we're going to continue to use seawater for this. Now, that's not prescribed that we would use seawater, but if we don't use seawater, we would then be using freshwater. And that's quite a bit of freshwater to go through. And right now we have chlorinated seawater, which seems insane, but that's what we have to do. But if you do go to a freshwater system, you could salinate or chlorinate to meet the health requirements. However, it's my understanding that the lagoon naturally drains, just as, for example, what we did just with Beach Life. So it would have to either go to a hardscape like a concrete structure or have a liner in it to prevent that, or we would have to have a constant replenishment of water, which hopefully soon will no longer come from AES, but it would have to then come from either a new intake permit, which we would have to get, and that process is not easy to understand, or to go to freshwater. And that's a lot of freshwater to deal with, especially if we still ended up draining it a couple times a year for beach life. So just some things to consider as we go forward, looking at the different design elements of it. And those things may not be known specifically by companies that are looking at design possibilities. So good to get that information to them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Anybody want to opine on this? All right, Mr. Hanson.
Good evening, City Council and City staff. Mark Hanson, member of the King Harbor Amenities Working Committee. I want to make a firm recommendation to you this evening that you do engage a slight postponement of your decision tonight. This just seems so illogical, and it could be made logical by a slight delay. Our amenities plan was during this phase was scheduled for 5 meetings, and our 5th meeting is May 23rd. And then of course, we're going to the community on May 31st. It seems completely illogical to overlap this by this tiny amount. And I'm going to be candid, it seems a little disrespectful to all the volunteers who've been working on this committee. And we're talking in great details about the Seaside Lagoon. And although, I understand some of the points made by the city manager, as I read through the as I read through the RFP, numerous places I say, oh, well, we should say this, we should say that, where the RFP is absolutely not getting the benefit of all of our hours of work. This RFP just isn't quite ready. It's close, but it's just really not there. And the Harbor Commission, well, heck, they'll meet again on June 13th. I mean, what a wonderful amount of value we can get to have our committee meet on the 23rd, the community give us some input on the 31st, and Harbor Commission give us a meeting on June 13th. And I will tell you, the Harbor Commission themselves were hugely valuable. We didn't have them scheduled for to talk about the amenities plan at their last meeting, but we changed that and we did. And thank goodness we did, because we got some really valuable input. We've got just 3 of the Harbor Commissioners on the amenities group, but boy, some of those other 4 are people who eat, live, and breathe the harbor, and they have great inputs. Just one example on the 3 drawings of the lagoon that we last had from the consultant. Well, 2 out of 3 showed lap pools. We now know that there's talk that we can maybe do a lap pool at Aviation Park. Beach Cities Health District is talking about one. So we're really in process. We're learning things and having intellectual discussions right now that could really help this RFP. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I'm going to tell you with strong confidence, there's going to be members of both the working committee and the Harbor Commission at large are going to feel a little disrespected respected from all the time they've put in to suddenly just jump this thing unnecessarily by a month or so. I hope this is helpful. Please postpone this and honor those 2 groups.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Anybody else for e-comments or Zoom comments? Can we get that picture up again one more time? Sorry. I just wanted to ask a question. That parking lot that we see over here behind 9 and 10 or behind 1 and 2, any of those, are those like legally required that we must have those either by the Coastal Commission or any of our measures, the control in the city?
There are some specific requirements associated with parking in our LCP. And
Grand Coast Plan, got it.
Yeah, so you've got, and that were of course amended via Measure C. So, Coastal traditionally has a no net loss parking requirement. I think that's continues right now. So Any parking adjusted for facility expansion has to be picked up somewhere else, or we have to make an argument that it's provided for through some alternative transportation method.
Okay, just a question. I just wonder whether we can better serve by, rather than giving a picture in the RFP, if we just give a satellite image of the existing site.
Oh, yeah.
So they can fill in the details or something
I
like
don't
that.
even think we're planning to give them a picture, candidly.
Okay,
I think
cool.
they're, to Mr. Hansen's point, they're going to get a whole data dump of everything that has been designed, discussed
Okay.
to date. That's what, there isn't, the point is, we're getting their solicited proposals. It's going to take time to collect that.
Yeah.
The hard work that Mr. Hansen's referencing, that we're also excited about, that the commission's performing, is all going to be available to these prospective proposers when they make their submittals. And it will affect how they analyze the project and ultimately what they begin to design. They're not going to do a thing with design until all of that is concluded. So yes, look, we could go back to the commission if it really makes it easier for the council. I just think the real work is going to begin likely in August and September after we start talking to these firms. It's not going to happen in May and June. And the longer we wait to put this out on the streets, the less we know who's interested in talking to us.
Right.
It's not as prescriptive a process. This isn't like a bid, or these aren't plans and specifications that we have to, this is us soliciting consultants. We get to talk to them. We could scrap the whole concept, pick a firm and say, okay, well, what do we want to put in their scope of work? We have no obligation here. This is meant
It's
to.
almost like a request for qualifications.
Exactly. It's as much an RFQ right now it is as an RFP.
All right. So I think this is the benefit of having a city manager who you trust and that you've been able to, essentially, you vetted before they came into the position, is that they understand the pace at which things move in the city and where things are going to line up. And I think we just got to trust that he wouldn't have brought this to us unless it was appropriate to move forward with it now and to gain as much interest from the outside world as we possibly can in this very underutilized area, with the exception of beach life. So I would favor moving forward with this RFP with an expanded, essentially, definition of who could respond, or qualifications as to who could, a broadened scope of qualifications as to who could respond to it.
I will second that motion you just made.
All right, so that's my motion.
And if the council's open, we can even pull back on some of the finite description of the project itself in here, if that puts people at ease, to describe that we're going to get this
Don't
ultimately.
eliminate a firm based on technicality.
Sure.
Allow all firms to apply for it.
We'll make that clear in here. And we'll mention that
Excellent.
there's going to be additional information provided through the process that Mr. Hansen and others mentioned. We're happy to do that.
As long as we're aware that the Harbor Commission really wants to weigh in on this, and I think we've all agreed on that.
They will.
They'll have plenty of opportunity.
And we'll make sure, I can commit to that. We will make sure they have an agenda item, if not in June, certainly in July, where they're talking about this scope of work and helping inform our evaluation of the prospective firms.
All right. So motion by Councilmember Obaji, second by Councilmember Horvath, Marenheim. And
should we change seats for you? Is that
sorry, no, I don't know. I just.
Is there more public comment?
No more public comment, correct? All right. All in. You have another?
I just want to say, what you just said, speed of government, we got to get things moving along. I trust our city manager to take these steps, and we can't just go every single step backwards and step forwards and double check. And that's the commission levels are more important for the detail and finite. Let us do the overall broad scope thing. So I really respect what you guys have to say and what you guys are doing there, commission level, but broad scope, let us just finish it and move things forward. So aye.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Passes 5-0. Thank you. And moving on to N. All right, N3, discussion possible action regarding a change in the municipal code to establish an ordinance for the unlawful possession of catalytic converters. Chief Hoffman.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So tonight I have a ordinance to introduce to you for your consideration that will give us an additional tool in our ongoing battle against catalytic converter thefts. So I have a few stats here. Catalytic converter thefts are a problem that is plaguing police departments and cities all across the country. We've seen a significant increase going back to about 2018. In 2020, we took 108 catalytic converter theft reports. And by the end of 2021, we were averaging about 15 a month. And just through the end of April in 2022, which was when we were putting this report together, we'd already had 66. So we're still on pace for that. This bar graph right here shows the jump in catalytic converter thefts between 2020 and 2021. In 2021, the thefts outpaced 2020 in 3 of the 4 quarters and was just behind by 5 in the 4th quarter there. So you can see how this problem is increasing and is still a significant consideration throughout Redondo Beach. They come in waves. We see these things come and all of a sudden we'll have 5, 10, 15 of them in a short amount of time, and then the people that are doing it must move on to another area, and then we'll have a lull of 2 or 3 weeks. And it makes it very, very challenging because we'll see an uptick in the number of the thefts, and we'll try to put details together and try to organize surveillance operations in different ways that we might be able to identify these suspects, and then the thefts seem to move on. So just a little bit of a background on catalytic converters. Some people say, why do they steal catalytic converters? So I just wanted to put a little slide here to kind of give everybody an idea of why do they steal these in the first place? So basically there's 3 different types of precious metals located inside the catalytic converters. There's platinum, which has some sort of properties that help oxidize the carbon monoxide in the catalytic converter. They have about 3 to 7 grams of that and goes for $1,100 an ounce. Palladium is similar to platinum, it's just stronger. And you can see that's 2,400 an ounce. And then rhodium, which is more expensive than gold. And it's mined in South Africa and Russia, which I just recently learned as I was putting this together, but is an incredible replacement cost there. But there's only 1 to 2 ounces of that. I'm sorry, grams, 1 to 2 grams inside one of these things. So when they recycle them, they're really not getting all that much. And the replacement cost to put on a new catalytic converter is usually well over $1,000. And that's not what they're getting from the recycling of it. So we've tried a variety of different things from the police department. We've done the etching events. There's a picture of one of our officers underneath the car at one of the etching events, engraving it with Redondo Beach PD and some descriptive information so that if we were able to arrest somebody that was in possession of a catalytic converter, we would hopefully be able to tie that back to a victim and have a better chance of getting criminal charges. We've tried the public awareness component by doing posts on our social media and publicizing when we do make arrests and having people go door to door when we identify types of vehicles that are high profile targets like Toyota Priuses, for example, and trying to provide information about cages that can be put around the catalytic converters and better ways to park and things that could possibly prevent becoming a victim of theft. And we've done the directed enforcement details, which I touched on earlier, but we've put officers to saturate different areas, plane cars, we've used drones, we've done all kinds of different things to try to make these arrests. But the problem with it is that we make the arrests and we still can't get charges filed. It might not shock you to know that of all the arrests that we've made so far for catalytic converters, we've filed 0 cases with the district attorney, 0. So without being able to identify the victim, we're not able to prosecute the case. And when somebody gets stopped and has 1, 2, or 3 catalytic converters in their car at 4 o'clock in the morning in a cordless Sawzall, and there's no markings on those catalytic converters that allow us to figure out where they came from, that's it. With the zero bail initiative, they're usually out of custody in a matter of hours. You can see this picture here. Those are all Redondo Beach detectives. I've used my Photoshop to block out one of the officers because he does some undercover work. But we participated in a multi-agency search warrant based on somebody that we arrested in Redondo Beach. Those are all catalytic converters. They weren't all stolen from Redondo Beach, but the people that stole them likely have been in here stealing them in the past. And currently, under state law, it's not illegal to possess multiple catalytic converters. And most of our cases are going unsolved, unfortunately. So we've looked at ways that we can actually do something in the city that would allow us additional tools so that we could actually take enforcement action. And we work closely with the city attorney's office, and we're able to get some examples and draft an ordinance that allows for a municipal code section that's a misdemeanor for unlawful possession of a catalytic converter. And the nice thing about it is that each incident would be a different charge. So if somebody had 3 catalytic converters or 4 catalytic converters, we could charge it 4 different times, which gives us additional ability to pursue things through our city prosecutor's office, such as stay-away orders and different things like that, that would hopefully have a significant effect on repeat offenders. And we have had cases, well, at least one that I know of for sure, where we arrested the same person in a 24-hour period for the same crime in Redondo Beach for stealing catalytic converters. So this is just another tool to where it would benefit us from being able to prosecute catalytic converters. What makes this easy for us to prosecute is if somebody is in possession of a catalytic converter and they don't own the vehicle that it came from or have written permission, then it's enough for us to actually take action on this section. So the recommended action that we have here is basically just to introduce this ordinance for first reading, the catalytic converter ordinance that would make it unlawful to possess any catalytic converter that isn't attached to the vehicle unless they had the actual documentation or proof to verify that the person was legally in possession of that, and would allow us a whole nother avenue of enforcement options when it comes to combating these types of crimes, which are beyond quality of life in the city and are a significant source and a draw on the resources. And I'm hopeful that by using this municipal code, if it can become effective, coupled with all the other efforts that we're taking, we're going to be able to significantly see a reduction in these crimes for the remainder of 2022. And that's the end of my presentation. Myself and Jillian Martins from the City Attorney's Office are both here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Chief. Just a quick question. I believe we had in our box a note dropped from the city of Artesia showing us that they passed a similar ordinance. Have we matched up what they're doing with what we're doing? Is this a kind of trend that's occurring in all the cities around us, or anybody know? Ms. Martins?
I'm working on it.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that.
You press hard, or there you go. You got it.
Oh, no, you
Oh,
turned
you
it off. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So we base this ordinance on other beach cities, particularly in Orange County area. But we looked at the different ordinances that were all around the state, mostly Southern California, and then determined which pieces we liked the most, incorporated them into our ordinance. I haven't seen Artesia's, I don't know it offhand, but if I could be provided a copy, I could give you an example.
And said basically the same thing. Another question is, if somebody's arrested, and I get that the district attorney is not filing on these where they can't file on it because they don't have proof, right? That's the reason why. But also they may prefer not to. But if they're arrested and they get convicted and they have to serve 3 months, 6 months, what do they do that here at the jail, or they get sent to county?
No, I mean, if they were convicted and actually had to serve jail time, it would be through the LA County Jail. Our jail facility is a temporary holding facility until we can transfer them to county jail. However, for something like this, that's a misdemeanor, the likelihood of somebody serving an actual jail sentence is very minimal, but it does give us additional options working closely with our city prosecutor's office to enact various other things with probationary status, stay-away orders, and things that would actually have more of an effect on repeated crime as opposed to punishment for one incident.
If they become liable for a civil penalty, that's potential, or sorry, a criminal monetary penalty, is that a possibility? It's 6 months or $1,000, something like that?
So there would be fines, and then we could also seek restitution for the victims of those crimes, and then attach that to their probation.
Now, if we don't have a victim to identify, can we, what happens with that money? Let's say if they do pay fines, does it go to the courts, or is it a fund we can create for victims of catalytic converter theft?
So we don't currently have a fund of that nature. We have the Redondo Beach Serious Crime Reduction Fund, which we utilize to plead out various types of, especially neighborhood issues like quality of life issues. So we could utilize that, or should we be so directed, we could create a specific fund where part of their sentence is to pay a fine to that fund.
Do we know, do insurance companies historically, do they cover this for their insurance drivers, like replace their catalytic converter, or are people usually out of pocket?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Most of the victims that I've spoken with have been out of pocket with these things.
Yeah, I have a friend who had his his stolen 3 times. So each time it was $1,000. Yeah. So and that's obviously just my own information, but yeah, I know that it's a major inconvenience, and obviously it's bad for the environment to continue to create more of these items as well.
Well, I'll say that I favor this ordinance in favor of creating a fund for catalytic converter theft victims from Redondo Beach. Councilmember MD.
You mentioned that you mentioned the prices for the ounces for the materials, but you didn't quite say, what is it that normally people get for these catalytic converters? Do you know?
Well, it varies. I've heard it could be anywhere from $200 to $500 or $600. I think it depends on the size of the catalytic converter and because it varies. There's 1 to 3 grams of some of the precious metals and then 3 to 7 grams of the other ones. It depends on the size of the catalytic converter, if it's off of a truck or off of a Prius. And also
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that the $500 fine was consistent with what they would get.
Oh, okay.
So that's okay. So that's.
It would be penalizing.
Be a penalizing amount. That's all I wanted to know. So thank you, though. This is a no-brainer, and honestly, I don't know who's ready to talk, but I would make a motion that we introduce by title only ordinance number 3230-22, an ordinance of City Council and City of Redondo Beach, adding Municipal Code 15 to Title 3 regarding the unlawful possession of catalytic converters for introduction and first reading.
So Mayor Pro Tem, City Attorney Mike Webb would like to speak.
Well, one sec. So with that motion second made, but I just wanted, this is a crime that is, yes, like you said, is complete quality of life issue for everyone. And this will be, hopefully other cities will pass this, but at the very least, we'll be able to catch the people who go through our city with catalytic converters from somewhere else. So I agree, this is definitely needed, and it'll definitely be an important tool. And I appreciate you bringing it forward to us. I'm done, thank you.
All right. Would you accept a friendly amendment to designate the funds recovered from enforcement for catalytic converter theft victims?
Of course. It was just my oversight on my part. Yes, of course.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Seconder says yes. All right. Councilmember Horvath, you're next.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to withdraw my request because you had me at the introduction of the title. I didn't even need to give a report.
Hey, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Do you make house calls? Is there any way residents can mark and identify, or shall I say ask, which way can the residents do something to their catalytic converters to get it back to them so that they can be, other than your serial number, if there's something they can do at home? Because I for sure as heck, I'd love to go, but I haven't had the time, community meetings, everything else along the way.
What we engrave them with is RBPD and then either license plate number on the vehicle or a driver's license number. So as long as somebody can see RBPD and look at that, then we'll be able to have a much better chance of tying it to a victim. Of course, if they get that and they're able to scrape it off or something like that, it's still going to make it challenging, but really any identifiable information. I just want to make sure that the reason that we do it is we put safety protocols in place when we actually lift the vehicles up to get under there and engrave the catalytic converters, because there is some sort of safety hazards there involved with that. So if somebody had the ability to safely engrave it, any sort of identifiable markings in Redondo Beach would be beneficial. However, I would still encourage anybody that wanted to get it engraved to please come to our engraving events. We're trying to do them every couple of months because we can make sure that it's done safely and nobody has to put themselves at risk to get it done.
And the reason I ask is because there's a lot of people who have the access and ability and tools to be able to do that. And then maybe we can expand the program out. The serial number wise you just answered the question, what is a serial number? If it's really just that simple, putting RVPD on there and then putting the license plate number or the driver's license number on there, then could we possibly have like Walton's on PCH, or actually PV Boulevard, any car shop that does, work on a car, maybe enlist their help to say, start writing this down, part of their daily
Sure,
agenda.
I think that's something our community services unit could talk to them about and say, would they be willing to offer that as a service and then report back that information to us to include in our database. That seems like it would be a possibility to expand what we have on file.
Right,
Awesome.
perfect.
All right.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's it. Do we have any more public comment?
We have Mike Webb who'd like to speak. City
All
Attorney.
right. City Attorney Webb.
Yes, two things. I would encourage you to amend the ordinance to make it a fine of $1,000. I know it's 500, inconsistent with some of the other cities, but our standard misdemeanor, this is less. Our standard misdemeanor is 1,000, and RTJ, I looked online, is 1,000 as well. And although it sounds nice, it horribly complicates it to create a fund to somehow magically reimburse the victims of catalytic converters. I don't know who would be responsible for managing that fund. I don't know how we would be able to track that fund. Now, we do try, if by that you mean, similar to what Ms. Martins alluded to, the Serious Crime Reduction Fund, we could set up an account with financial services and offer a plea bargain where they could donate to that fund. But if you tried to make the fine payable into that fund, it has the unanticipated or unintended consequence of turning into restitution and lessening the fine. Because if you pay a fine, the court also adds a penalty assessment, which is 3 times the original fine. They don't do that for restitution. So if you could amend the motion to ask financial services to create that account, and we can try and plea bargain so that there's money in there, but then you're going to separately have to decide how you're going to allocate that and how you're going to decide which of the victims get the amount, what the amount they get. Is it first come, first serve? And none of that is contemplated in the ordinance.
All right. Thank you for that.
Okay, so that was my first thought, is to increase it. That's why I asked that question. So I'd like to amend my motion to change it to $1,000, and let's remove the whole reimbursement thing. It's a good idea, but it sounds complicated, and let's just make that go away for now.
So are you going to direct us to talk to financial services about creating the account, or just basically utilize our existing resources?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Perfect.
Still second.
All right. So motion's amended. Is that clear to you all? All right. The fine is increased to $1,000. Any further public comment?
Oh, there's somebody that would like to speak.
Come on up if you'd like to speak.
Hi, Council. I'm not actually a resident. They usually don't accept there as a address, a jail cell or gun of delivery. Oh, yeah, a number of residents, former residents.
You want to identify yourself first?
Oh, my name's Gregory Thomas.
All right.
Like, people I've done chores and helped with their vehicle maintenance. Someone steals their catalytic converter. To me, they usually have to continue operating their vehicle. Usually the catalytic converter exceeds the cost of buying another vehicle. So it's like they're always at risk of asphyxiation. And I don't think putting a fine would actually, it doesn't make sense to me, because someone takes your catalytic converter, it's almost like attempted murder. I think if I remember right, the Penal Code 594, that's destruction of state property. I don't think the catalytic converter is part of the title of ownership. It's held on the motor vehicle. It's actually retained by the state. And it's like, just the example, some motor vehicles, I remember a friend's ministry, it had, I think, 4 or 5 on his GMC van, and they get prohibitively expensive, but people still operate even not knowing that they didn't have experience with their vehicle maintenance. They don't know it's missing. They just know it's louder. But I don't think putting a fine would actually deter that. It just makes it a higher stakes then you could ask someone to pay a fine with money that's likely from what they gain from selling stolen parts. It's almost like the city's receiving money from that very activity. I mean, I'd almost want to ask for, if it's within your ability, if the city would be able to allow people to, is there any exoneration if someone thinks that's happening? Would they be able to act more appropriately, if police are already minutes away, they can't rely on police? Because I've heard stories, I think in Torrance, the operation of stealing a catalytic converter is several other vehicles, one keeping watch and others maybe distracting a homeowner, and then there's someone underneath the car, could be with a Sawzall. But like what I've suspected around the Redondo main public pier is when someone operates their vehicle or they drive through with a motorcycle, they'll rev their engine because they're testing to see which vehicles parked have a alarm system that goes off. That's why you hear so many cars have an alarm system go off. But the police, they're always looking at me like they're more concerned about me than they are, potential thieves. Oh, I'm out.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your insights.
Yeah.
All right. Any other public comments?
I have none for Zoom and none for e-comment.
Anybody from the public? All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And all against? Nobody, passes 5-0.
Okay, introduction by title only, ordinance number 3230-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adding municipal code chapter 15 to title 3, regarding the unlawful possession of catalytic converters for introduction and first reading as amended. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to N4, discussion possible action on accelerating the implementation of traffic calming improvements through the reduction of policy barriers and changes to process. Director Saman and Chief Engineer Winge.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Ted Saman, Public Works Director. This is a strategic plan item in which the council asked to bring back for discussion, the ability to consider modifications to our traffic calming policies so that we could expedite the process a little bit more. We've got some elements that we'd like to present to you and go through them now. Andy?
Sorry about that. Good evening, Andy Winge, City Engineer. Thank you, Ted. As Ted mentioned, this is in response to a strategic plan goal to improve city services to the public. I want to start off with some history of traffic calming efforts performed by our staff over the last 4 years. There's about 8 neighborhoods represented here on this chart where we have taken a neighborhood approach to look at traffic calming. Number of various elements that we've introduced and have been approved to achieve traffic calming in these neighborhoods. And really the purpose of this slide is just to show that it is a fairly broad and complex process to address traffic calming solutions that are both effective and popular within the communities. But we're proud of this history, recognizing, of course, that it takes time to do this, and we're very much interested in improving our service to the community in a response to requests for traffic calming. We've identified a number of policy or process barriers or concerns as we implement both traffic calming requests, and we have a kind of a subcategory always stop requests, which we get a number of over the year. As we've been through our understanding of what's happened over the last few years, some of these concerns have jumped out of us, and I'll start with the always stop request process. Currently, our process requires residents making a request for an always stop to approach their community neighbors within 150 feet of the intersection to solicit support through a petition process. It's been resident driven. In other words, the residents are knocking on doors and gaining signatures. We provide the addresses during the social distancing, and we began to mail questionnaires to the various residents and ask them to reply to us directly. We also, once the petition was done in our current process, then the next step would be for the engineering staff to do an initial assessment for safety concerns at the intersection, and if necessary, carry it further for a further traffic analysis, which may or may not involve expending of resources to get data and that kind of thing. So a barrier there, again, the linear approach is a step-by-step methodical approach, but it does take time. The resident petition process is a bit burdensome to the residents, and especially during the COVID era, was a difficult process for them to do. On the traffic calming side, we examining our documents that are available on our webpage regarding process, it seems to be that the traffic calming request environment is set up for people to try and select a solution that they think might solve the problem that they're observing. And we think that approach puts too much weight on the citizen to figure out how to solve a problem that the engineering team really ought to be looking into. So that's a barrier we've noticed. There's also a concern to be concerned just with the street where you live, looking at only your street for speed cushions, for instance. And the law of unintended consequences says that if you make it harder to go down their street at speed, they'll find the next street over to go down. Also, current barrier is that our public outreach is somewhat limited when we do a street-by-street analysis, and we don't get as broad of feedback and input from the neighboring streets and residents on those streets. And then the final thing that I've identified here is that we have an iterative process now where we start with the least maybe impactful thing to do. For instance, we might refresh striping or signage on a street, see if that works, wait for a few months, test it again, go back out with maybe some new signs or other things, and before we finally get into the more intrusive or traffic altering types of facilities on the street. And that just takes time, the time to evaluate each step, the time to get new data, time to let drivers get used to the new improvements. All that just seemed to elongate the time unnecessarily. In a number of cases, we've recommended temporary installations, bulb outs, or many traffic circles come to mind. And we've had a number of those be very effective in terms of calming traffic, but they were rejected by the residents for other reasons, their appearance, maybe a misunderstanding of how to use the facility, that kind of thing. So we're thinking that in the future, we should get away from kind of the iterative approach and improve that with some new ideas, which I'd like to talk about at this point. So again, I'll start with the always stop requests. We're proposing that the new policy, new procedure would shift the burden of understanding the neighborhood's level of support for an intersection to the staff. And so we would suggest continuing to use the practice that we started in COVID, where we're reaching out to the residents by mail, asking for them to respond by mail. This both gives us, it actually requires less time for the staff to do because we don't have to correlate signatures with residences. For instance, if they come in a petition, we can assume we've got the right person there if it's coming in by the mail. It also allows us to get that information back in a much quicker time frame. We've been using a time frame of 12 to 18 weeks to allow these petitions to occur, and we think we can get a pretty good idea of whether or not the neighborhood is supportive within 4 weeks or so if we do it by mail. So it shortens the timeline there. We're also proposing that as we initiate the neighborhood survey, we also begin our traffic safety evaluation at the same time. So we're doing two things at the same time, and again, knocking some time off the timelines for that. Once we get that information back, that will lead us to decisions about whether we need further traffic study evaluation, whether it meets the current requirement is for 66% of the neighbors to be in support before we move on to the Public Works Commission for their input, or to reach one of these, the other threshold would be meeting the traffic safety issue at the intersection. So we'll get to a flow chart in a minute where this will make a little bit more sense, but those are some of the improvements that we're looking at, is trying to shorten timelines by doing things at the same time. When we move on to the traffic calming request, proposed improvements, We, as I mentioned, asking the residents to identify the right solution for the problem they're seeing is probably a little bit more than we should expect. And so our proposal is to have our traffic engineering team meet with the residents initially, any of the neighbors that are interested, and have a conversation about the problem that they're seeing, and then let the engineering team circle back with solutions that could be effective, choosing a number of options and letting the process roll forward about which the most popular items are among the effective solutions for an intersection. We also recommend continuing this neighborhood approach that we started a few years ago at the recommendation of the Public Works Commission rather than a street-by-street approach. We've also found that we don't think our public outreach has been as effective as it could be if we involve the council members more to present some of these things at district meetings or to get more involved at an earlier stage with outreach, helping us to design our outreach program, how many streets we talk to, how many people we talk to, that kind of thing. So we're proposing that we start that outreach to you all earlier in our process as well. And then again, the final solutions, really this is just about measuring twice and cutting once, not trying to start with a temporary facility and then come back later and replace it with something else. So this could be more expensive in the short term because for instance, with the traffic circle, we might suggest rather than putting out a temporary facility, we just go ahead and put in a permanent facility. Again, expensive, but the permanent facility could carry the day because people see how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to look, and be satisfied with that, whereas they wouldn't be with the temporary solution. So those are some of the things in list form. Let me show them to you on this couple of flow charts that we've developed. Hoping the flow chart is able to communicate a process better than our current narratives have been. We have pages and pages you can read on our website about what's supposed to happen for all the various scenarios, and it's pretty hard to follow. So we just decided to come up with a flow chart. That one page, easier to communicate, easier to track, and point people to where we are on the chart. So on both of these charts, for the always stop as well as for the traffic control charts, you're going to see that the city council referral process is a parallel process to what we're doing as a staff with the residents. In other words, at any time, the city council referral will allow a process to be accelerated, to be moved ahead, whatever your wishes are according to the referral. And in the always stop chart here, we can, you could advance something directly to a traffic study or directly to the Public Works Commission or directly back to the city council. Our always stop requests from the residents usually come in a number of forms, emails, letters, phone calls, Comcade, et cetera. We consolidate those, and we're committed to a very firm logging in our new tracking system, acknowledgement back to the resident, and then a more substantial reply after a couple of days from one of our traffic engineering team. I mentioned that request. Every request would initiate both a safety review and evaluation of the intersection. That's a traffic collision history study and line of sight analysis by the staff, as well as initiate a resident survey, which is the mailers I discussed earlier. From the safety evaluation side, if we meet the threshold, in other words, if there is a safety evaluation issue, we would move that forward immediately to a traffic study in the Public Works Commission. If there's not, we would check and see what the response rate was from the mailers, and if there's sufficient response, we would move that forward on that basis. If not, we would close the request and not implement the solution, the request. From the traffic study in the Public Works Commission, there's some time needed to do some preparation for the Public Works Commission report, but assuming they approve, then we'd come to City Council for your decision. The schedule on the left side of the chart here estimates maybe 15 weeks or so to get from the request to a council meeting decision. I think that's shorter than what we're doing now. It's possible that could be accelerated. We do have a lot of requests. One of the attachments shows the 14 requests that we currently have pending. So staffing is a challenge at some point with the number of things that our traffic engineering team is being asked to do. So this is kind of an ideal world, but we're certainly committed to accelerating the process through just the improvements in process itself. Let me talk about the traffic calming flow chart just a minute. Sorry if I'm you're glazing over with the charts here.
Just a quick question. What was AWS? What does that stand
I'm sorry,
for?
always stop.
Always stop.
Always stop,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Typically, stop sign requests come in where there's already some control at the intersection. Right. Okay, again, you'll see that the city council referral option is always to go, to move the issue forward. The requests come in the same way. The log acknowledgement and reply stage happens to, demonstrate respect to the resident who's making the request, that they're being heard and will be responded to. The preliminary review is a new step where we move that forward in the process to meet with the residents early to talk about what their real concerns are and how we might address those. Then this traffic engineering team will get into an analysis protocol and go through what they need to go through to identify effective solutions and also add cost to them to help you decide what might be done if it gets as far to you. And then we would reach out to the council member at that point and talk about, here are the options. How would you like us to do outreach? Would you like us to come to a district meeting? Would you like us to do mailers? Would you like us to do something else? So we would like to involve you at that time in that process to help us make that decision about how we reach out, but then also to help us make the decision about whether we continue based on the feedback we get from the public. If we choose to continue, then we'll go to the Public Works Commission for our standard meeting with them, and then on to City Council if they recommend it. So that's the process we're proposing. I hope the chart makes it a little bit simpler to understand, and even the weeks on the left side there again helps people to understand about how long it might take. Again, this is ideal conditions where we have staff to be able to do it and don't have too big of a backlog with other projects. So these are the improvements we're proposing on a page, in a nutshell, if you will. One last thing that we want to take some ownership of is our communications with the public on this. Internally, we have some work to do, and we're working on it already, a tracking system so that we get the letters, the emails, the communicates all in one place, and we can keep track of those better. We are opening that software up to use by our entire engineering division staff so that the person who answers the phone might be able to answer a question. I might be able to answer a question if our traffic engineer is not available. In the past, we've had to kind of wait and see what the traffic engineer says about where we are in some of these things. So we want to make that more accessible so we can communicate better some of the common questions that we get. The software we're using has an automated email feature where we can provide tickler emails to the people responsible for next steps and moving things forward. We think that'll help keep it on the front burner. And then an open ticket report could be generated where we could provide a report to you or to our internal management about where we are with our requests and how we're doing, keeping up with the timelines that we hope to achieve. On the public information side, again, the log acknowledgement reply we think is an important step to make sure people feel heard and that we will be responded to. We've made some improvements and are still making improvements to our traffic engineering webpage to declutter it a little bit, make it obvious about how to register a request if you'd like to, right on that page, or get resource information about either how the process works or what some of our criteria are for the decisions that we're recommending. And then finally, our policy flow charts, we like to make those available to people so they can kind of see what the process is and understand it a little bit better than some of our longer narratives. All right, in terms of recommendations, we'd love to get input from you and direction on our current policies and procedures and ask you to approve the proposed always stop procedure modifications and traffic calming policy procedure modifications as presented or as amended by you in your comments. Thank you very much, and happy to take questions.
And if I could add to that, Mayor Pro Tem, briefly, I just want to thank Ted and Andy for contemplating this issue quite seriously. This was a strategic plan objective. It's been a referral. You've all, at different times and multiple times, expressed frustration as to the delay and the bureaucratic nature of our traffic calming approach. If you really look back at our old policies, particularly our stop sign policies, I believe they were created to effectively create a barrier, a prohibition for the installation of stop signs by really putting it back on the backs of residents, forcing the petition gathering process at the residential level. Just don't think that's appropriate in a contemporary organization. We would really like to take the reins on that now, manage that process, not put that pressure back on the residents to gather that feedback, and then really allow the traditional engineering analysis to help expedite it where it's needed, and then still provide a path forward for those locations that just ultimately the neighborhood would like to see installed. So we think these are tweaks that help. It's not us abandoning our efforts entirely, but we hope that they are process improvements that the council sees as valuable that ultimately should allow for us to more quickly evaluate these types of requests and better manage our customer expectations here so we don't create the frustration that has built in many of these inquiries in years past from start to finish. So thanks, Ted and Andy, for really looking at this in a deep dive way.
Yeah, thank you. This is absolutely phenomenal that you guys undertook this whole kind of analysis of what could be done better, more efficiently, and in a more customer service oriented manner for the residents. I really appreciate that. I especially appreciate it, Andy, at a time when you are being chief engineer for the engineer for the city, the traffic engineer for the city, and corresponding with residents that I send to the public works about traffic calming issues in their neighborhood, in our neighborhood. So that you're doing all that and you're doing this at the same time, I really am appreciative. For all that you all are doing and joining our meetings with Supervisor Mitchell's office. Ted was there. I think you were there too, Andy, actually. Thank you. I favor these changes and let's go to Councilmember Narenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Baji. Wow, I owe you guys all a beer for this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, I'll drop it off. No, I mean, the policy by flowchart, bam, right there. Just want to stop for a second. You know, I that flowchart, I've built a lot of flowchart these last few years, over the last 10 plus years for IT stuff. It's not easy. It's a lot of thought. Makes it very simple for the user to understand, but it takes a phenomenal amount of thought to be able to build that and understand the different steps along the way. And I'll go one step further, how great that flow chart is that you guys showed up there, because it's not exactly the same flow chart that it's in staff report. In staff report here, it's black and white. But if you were just taking that flow chart and put it up there, it would just blinded everybody. So you actually colorized it and did this, so it shows up better on there. So I really want to thank you for the presentational differences. Those small things make big differences, and it is absolutely true. Rather than throwing the onus on the backs of the residents, now with in here tickler emails for better service, both automation makes things simpler for all parties involved, both reminding people. That's customer service. That's customer focus. Thank you. And I didn't see anything in this report or the way it would be changed. I mean, the only thing I could possibly nitpick here is when it goes to a city council meeting, we might want to send it back to Public Works Commission just as a return circular, and comes back to us for changes. But that's just more of a policy if we make that decision. So it doesn't need to be changed there or not. But thank you for the flow chart, getting it updated on the website. I love the tracking of the different projects you guys have done, because it shows the different projects that you've been involved in and moving forward on. People understand that it's not as easy as, hey, why isn't there a speed bump here? I asked for it. So I appreciate that. So other than that, I'd love to show this tomorrow night at my online community meeting and see what they have to say, but I don't have any other comments other than that. Thank you. Great job.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Obaji. Great job. Cutting it down to 15 weeks is great, considering the bulb out on Maria took about 15 years. So we go from 15 years. And I'm not exaggerating. They started, you remember the process with the resident-led petition from 15 years to 15 weeks is a huge improvement. And I really want to thank you for the thought that's put through this. The only thing I would recommend is, and this is part of the strategic plan, status where we do follow the status, if you recall. It's part of, I think it's item 4, internal communications, project status. It would be nice to be able to share that with residents once it goes through the queue for people to know, because I can't say how many times people said, where are we at with the Maria bulb out?
Right.
And I had to check back with you. What we don't realize is it actually takes time to go back and forth for you all to check this, for me to relay it to residents, for them to ask more questions. If it's available online, once we do this, hopefully project management software, then it would be great because then there's more transparency. It would help you so that you don't have to respond to those type of requests. You meaning city manager, Andy, Ted, et cetera. So my suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's a great one. And that when we say that word open ticket, that's what we're hoping, that there's an external face to that open ticket that can be both reviewed, as a two-way function. And that's really the goal here. And yeah, we can do a better job with that communication for sure.
Great, thank you. That's it for me. Appreciate it.
All right. Motion. Anybody want to make a motion?
Motion to
Oh,
approve.
sorry, we got a
Public
public
comment?
comment, sorry, yes. Public comment? We have our
Want everybody ready?
5 folks here.
Motion to approve proposed.
None on Zoom and no e-comments. So Councilmember Horvath, the motion to approve, I'll second it. And all in, this is your motion, just to be clear, is to,
Approve proposed always stop procedure modifications and proposed traffic calming policy procedure modifications.
all right.
Did you guys get that in the?
Adopt the proposed,
It's what's written on the screen.
yes, oh yes, those.
The bottom two.
The bottom 2 bullets. Approve proposed always stop policy, approve proposed traffic calming policy, procedure modifications on both. There you go. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? Nope, passes 5-0.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Saman and Engineer Wenji. All right, we're moving on to PC. Sorry. This is N5, are we? All right, N5, discussion possible action regarding programs and grant funding available to support the expansion of electric vehicle chargers on commercial corridors. So our city manager delivering our strategic items once again.
This time Luke's going to cover this presentation. So I think he's ready to boot up here.
All right.
Yeah,
Mr.
ready to
Smoot.
go?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Item before you tonight is related to our strategic planning item, requesting that staff investigate programs and grant funding opportunities that are available to expand the network of EV chargers in Redondo Beach's commercial corridors. Fortunately, there's a lot of good news on this topic coming from multiple fronts. First, at the federal level, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed by the president on November 15th of last year, allocates $7.5 billion in dedicated funding to make EV chargers more accessible. And that is made up of a $5 billion National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Plan, NEVI, and then also a $2.5 billion discretionary grant program that's going to be fleshed out a little bit as time goes on. I think the $5 billion tranche will be more applicable to us. And in order to access funds, the state of California is in the process of preparing a infrastructure deployment plan, and that is due to the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation by August 1st of this year. And then those are all expected to be approved by September 30th. And basically after that time and after the plan approval by the new joint agency, states would have access to those funds. And at this point, the government figures that have come out put California's share of that to be $383.6 million over that 5-year period. So, and at this point, it's still under development, so we won't know until the California plan is submitted, but we will keep abreast of that and make sure we're ready to jump on any opportunity that does come forth. And so, this plan the NEVI plan is basically designed to build a convenient, reliable, affordable, and equitable network of EV chargers. And they want to do that by leveraging alternative fuel corridors and also in close proximity to our interstate highway system. And so if you look at the map here on my slide, Redondo Beach is pretty well positioned in both of these areas. And they, for rural areas, want a charger within every 50 miles. Obviously, that's not an issue that we have here, but they do want to build out and invest within 1 mile stretches of these alternative fuel corridors, as well as our interstate highway system. And so on the map, if you look at that 1 mile buffer, that's around PCH, which is one of the first in the first series of alternative fuel corridors that was approved by the federal government, and then also the 1 mile buffer between Interstate 405. A good portion of the city is covered. Obviously, part of Artesia Boulevard is not covered there in the central, the northern part of Redondo. But considering our footprint, we do have a pretty good chance to get funding based on what they've said are their priorities of being in that 1 mile radius. And so because it is still in development, we will keep abreast of the changes and obviously bring any specific funding opportunities back to you at a future date for that federal program. And so moving on to local programs that are available, we've been working with Southern California Edison, develop sites and prepare applications for their Charge Ready program. And basically, the Charge Ready program is a partnership with SCE that leverages publicly owned facilities to expand the EV charging network. And SCE, through this program for approved projects, pays for the design and installation of all the infrastructure needed, basically up to the stub out. And then the city is responsible for purchasing and managing the charging stations themselves and make a rebate of $750 per plug available to the city for anything that is installed. And we're currently evaluating multiple waterfront locations at this time. And once we develop the site that is the most suitable for potential application, we will bring back that application to you for approval. And some of the things that SCE has recommend that we look at is projected usage of the EV chargers, visibility to the community, as well as proximity to existing electrical infrastructure. And so starting at the waterfront, those 3 lots that are highlighted, I've been able to walk them with Public Works and discuss it with Waterfront and Economic Development. And all 3 of those sites, from a city perspective, seem promising, but we do want to wait on input from Southern California Edison to see what site would make the most sense from their standpoint as well. And so again, for those specific sites, we'll come up with the best and then bring that application for you to approve for approval. And because this was a more general item based on commercial corridors, this was just where we focused our effort to begin with in the last month or so that I've been on the project. And so a recommendation for tonight would just be to solicit your input for future sites that you would like us to prioritize as we're looking at both Charge Ready program and the federal funding program, the NEVI program, and then staff, will continue to work on these applications as we move forward. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm definitely open to your suggestions on other sites you'd like us to prioritize.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Smoot. I would say 100% get in touch with the Galleria developers, El Catardin, Stuart Miller, and Jeff Mailman, to see if they plan on putting in, it just occurred to me to ask them, if they plan on putting in EV chargers there. If not, would they consider it if the city got them delivered, or got funding for it? Alternative, if they are planning on it, they want to increase the number of chargers they have available. And then another place might be that parking lot that's under the SCE right of way on Artesia Boulevard.
Okay.
Because it's a little more open and obvious than the North Branch Library that's kind of tucked away.
Right.
That would be a good visible spot if SCE allows it, especially also because in the evenings when people go home or whatnot, it's empty,
Right.
So it's busy. It gets cars during business hours, but after that it's totally empty. So that could be a great spot. And I'd just say make sure you get them to the far north and to the the mid north, District 4, District 5. And otherwise, that seems like a central location in South Redondo.
Okay. And just to point out on that last map, Public Works did a great job in their initial project last year where they did have the first 6 chargers installed of spreading them geographically throughout the city.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely continue on that trend, but I did want to
for
point
sure.
that
No,
out.
they did, and yeah, they are all over the city, which is great. Though people somehow still don't know about them. But speakers, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, my only feedback would be that we just continue to facilitate EV charging stations at as many public places as possible, things that we have direct control over. So, you know, parking lots, whether, you know, municipal lots. When it comes to private entities, you know, we can maybe talk about policies or ways to incentivize our private partners to do this, but they should be doing it anyways. And there was just an article the other day about how California, for all its, you know, accelerated, you know, EV discussions, is super far behind in terms of the infrastructure to support what they want to build out. So if the purpose of this discussion tonight is mostly related to public facilities, then I would say let's just really focus on expanding at all public parking lots and places where there are vehicles. And or to Councilmember Obaji's comment about Artesia, as we're doing this parking study, you know, really thinking about, you know, whether if we're going to have paid parking on Artesia eventually to create turnover, you know, how do we also implement as a part of that electric EV charging, you know, at curb instead of just in a parking lot.
Okay. Yeah, and actually, he makes a good point, Councilmember Horvath does, about Artesia. Some chargers on Artesia Boulevard, if that's possible to do, would be great. The same way I think they have it on Hermosa, around 2nd Street. They have a charger right there in the middle island. That could be a great way to get people to park and walk around for 2 hours, charge up their car. Especially if you get one EV charger, one Tesla charger, people will be milking those things. All right. Councilmember Narenheim.
Does this include charging for electric bikes? Is there anything out there for electric bikes, electric bike charging? Because those are becoming wildly popular, probably more popular than I'd like, but.
It's not something that I looked into as part of this, you know, analysis so far, but certainly something I can see if other cities are going in that direction.
Jeff Ginsburg is trying to put in some Tesla superchargers in his facility, his building on that corner of Avenue I and Catalina. And he had brought Tesla out. They said, oh, this is great, fantastic. All totally behind it. And they said, just one problem. SCE's infrastructure does not allow for superchargers in South Redondo because they don't have the infrastructure to be able to support that type of power requirement. Yeah, superchargers. So
Put them all in North Redondo.
So is that something that we can? I mean, it's SCE, you know, and they make plenty of money, $1 billion of profit. What did you say last month or last quarter?
Extra $1 billion of revenue.
Oh, their revenues. Yeah, that's right. It's just, what's $1 billion between friends? Is there? I mean, I don't really want. I'm not looking to pay for their upgrades, but is that going to impact our ability to put in those types of chargers or chargers in general? If we start adding a lot of these, is that going to affect our ability or grant funding?
I don't know on affecting our ability from an infrastructure standpoint. I don't know much or don't know enough about SCE's infrastructure to opine, but I think from a grant funding perspective, they look at it on a project by project basis. So if our projects are ticking the boxes that they want to get as far as leveraging public facilities and expanding the availability of EV chargers without it being too big of an infrastructure cost. And that's why at the waterfront lots, we're looking at where the transformers are, looking at where the existing infrastructure is. So I think on a project by project basis, it wouldn't walk it back. But like I said, I don't know enough to say about whether it'll impact down the line their ability to support it on the infrastructure.
Well, and we'll probably be able to test that a little bit through the EV Charge Ready program if we ask them for options on the south end of town too, as we further explore, you know, the opportunities there. So we'll test that theory. It's first I'd heard that. It doesn't surprise me. I know our Edison redundancies at the south end of town aren't great. And gosh, it's not been too long since we've had exploding vaults here in not too far from City Hall. So yeah, I'm not shocked by that, but we'll pull on that thread a little bit and see what's out there. Yeah, no pun intended with the shock.
So the parking lot at the end of the Esplanade, that little roundabout corner there, having one item there, because getting more people to come down to the beach, especially if they come from far away, I think would be valuable. We only have 2 in the Riviera Village. Here at City Hall, we have 2, I believe, right across from the police station, but do we have any down below in the main library?
Not public charge ready stations, I don't believe. We have some electrical charging capacity, I think, in there for maybe city vehicles, but I don't think we have any public stations to my knowledge.
Yeah, there's one under the Public Works office, but I don't believe there's a subterranean in the library structure.
The Alta Vista location, I think, would be a great place, even though it's very community oriented. It would be the lowest on my list because it's just all residents pretty much primarily that show up there. It's not, I'd rather see this as a visitor serving amenities from people coming from outside of Redondo. That's how I kind of see this. If you're coming from 2 miles away, you're not going to use this, right? So that's Performing Arts Center, I think, would definitely need it because, again, that's visitor serving. But those are just my comments. Oh, my last thing is I see electrical stuff here, but there are other future upcoming technologies like hydrogen power. Is that part of this? 'Cause hydrogen power really is electric power as well.
Yeah, so this specific item was focused on the EV charging infrastructure. At least that's how it was presented in the strategic plan. But certainly we could entertain any other fuel.
Yeah, I mean, hydrogen power is they need something here in South Bay, and I've talked with some of the hydrogen power providers. The only one we have is by the old Toyota Center off the 405 there.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be making a bit of a comeback, in concept, but I have yet to hear much in the way of dedicated public grant infrastructure programs associated with that build out. But I know there's some interest in the sector itself, so we'll be aware. That might fall more to the commercial kind of community development side of things.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Aaron. What we see in other cities sometimes is little signs that say EV charge or some insignia that says, hey, this is where the EV chargers are. I think from our existing chargers, it would be good if we set up some signs like on Artesia Boulevard, even on PCH here, directing people towards the police station. Same thing at Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. And I would differ slightly with Councilmember Nierenheim. I don't think it's just for people who are visiting. The people who are renting don't have the ability to plug in their cars. Actually, in my district, a resident told me that they are prohibited from charging their car at the apartment complex. They got in trouble. The landlord came down, saw the spike in the electric bill, told them you are not allowed to do that, so on and so forth. So I think that's 46% of our residents are renters. So we need, I think that's why we need to make them aware that this charging is available. Councilmember Lowenstein.
I would agree exactly. That's what I was going to say. And I would agree with what Christian said about parks. One place in particular I think about is Dominguez, because not only is it a centrally located park, but you've got a lot of apartment buildings near there with no ability to charge vehicles, and those are going to be enormously popular. So for areas like Riviera Village, it makes sense for visitors. For even the Pier area, it makes sense for visitors. But we also want to bring this towards residents because that's how you're going to get adoption. It's the number one, besides the cost, it's the number one objection to buying it is I have no place to be able to plug it in. And when you provide people like that, you'll get more adoption. And so pushing it closer to where people live, I think is really important. Anderson Park could be another one. Wherever there are lots of apartment buildings and parks, I think that's a great way of Alta Vista Park. You've got Brookside Village right across the street. So, there's wherever you have lots of apartment buildings and I think the ones actually down here would be very popular. You know, a lot of people in the village can't charge their car, right? So anywhere closer to large developments, public lands for parks, great place to locate them, I think, if we're going to look at this. So that's it.
But add to the village, right? I mean, do you think have those been filled? Those cars? Or do you guys know the utility rate of those chargers in the village?
Riviera Village, you mean?
Yeah.
Are they the same as the charge point ones here?
I mean, like, are they being used? Are they occupied?
Oh, utility rate.
I see them used all the time, up to including being backed in. Not just going forward in, but being
Right,
backed in, to
backed
your
in,
point,
yeah.
yeah. Absolutely.
So maybe if we're already getting a lot of usage out of one, just adding them at that location, because that location seems to work, right?
Yeah, no, sure.
All right, you need anything formal on this?
No, just
Public
input.
comment. All right.
Hi, I'm Carissa Gallardo. I just wanted to, I saw this on the agenda and I was going to speak to it, and I'm really glad that both you, Obaji and Lowenstein, spoke to the apartments. I rent on that apartment row on Agate Street, and I would like to buy an electric car, but that's been one of the things. We can't have one in the garage, and my neighbor just bought a Tesla, and he's going to have to drive it to West LA to his fiance's place so that he can charge it every once in a while. So as much as we can have different spots, maybe Dominguez Park, that sounded good to me, but Anderson Park, anywhere around where there might be some higher density apartment spaces is something to look at, as well as the village. I like the idea of residents or visitors coming and staying a while in our city. So that's it. Thank you.
And, that brings up a good point, which is, even if we don't think that we might necessarily be able to use all the chargers that we may get funding for, let's put them in. What's going to happen? That people are going to end up using them eventually. I mean, this is the way that we're going. So let's maximize how many we can put in, even if we make a whole row in the Riviera Village or Performing Arts Center, for that matter, of spots. Councilmember MD.
I was just going to say that, and I'm just looking it up right now, but I could have sworn there was a law that said that landlords have to put in electrical charging stations. Not that I'm against putting them in all the different places you said, but just so all of you know, there is a law that says that if you request a charging station, the landlords have to put them in. And I learned that when we were looking for different places in Hermosa. There was a Tesla for a little one-bedroom place. I couldn't believe there was a Tesla charging station in their designated parking spot. But just FYI on that.
Just one note for the community, for those who don't know, there is a Tesla charging facility at the Marine Avenue Hotel Complex that is open to the public. It's a supercharger.
There's like 10 of them, right?
Yeah.
10.
The Marine Avenue Hotel?
The Marine Avenue Hotel property, yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Well, which would be another spot if you're going to go to private to see, do they have regular charging? Because it seems to me it was only Tesla.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it's just a Tesla facility. I don't think it's compatible with other cars, but it is popular.
I think why a person would potentially drive to, somewhere else is they don't want to pay for a Tesla charger and they can get it free at somebody else's house. That's potentially why. But yes. But yeah, there's also one in Hermosa for that matter, supercharger.
There's tons of them on the top, yeah, and they're free. You just have to pay for parking.
All right. But downstairs there's a supercharger too. In Hermosa.
Is there?
Yeah. All right. Anything here? Receive and file?
Yep.
Motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file.
Second that. All right. Thank you, Mr. Smood.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Nope, passes 5-0. We'll receive and file that. Discussion and possible action, N5. Oh, we did that. All right, city manager items.
Yes. Yeah, just, thank you, Luke. Just two items tonight. I want to echo what everybody up at the dais, council members, thank you for recognizing the efforts, particularly Chief Hoffman, Chief Kaufman, fire and police department staff, public works, community services for their work with Beach Life again this year. By all accounts, a very smooth activity. No major incidents, which is always our biggest concern. And just want to thank them again for all their hard work and being at the ready. And it's so great to have all of you all in attendance experiencing the show so we get direct feedback on customer experience. So just big thanks to the staff and all their hard work. It was a long weekend for many of our first responders in particular. And then secondly, it's with a little bit of sadness that I announced that Susan Anderson, our library director, is going to be retiring in August. So I wanted to make the council aware of that. She's let her staff know. She notified the Library Commission, I believe, last night as well. So word's out. We are immediately working on updating the job spec for the position, and we'll be initiating a recruitment to replace her. Our goal is to try to have somebody on board before she exits so we can effectuate a smooth transition. But we are going to be losing Susan. She's been with us now for several years, done a great job, and she'll be missed. But thankfully, she's given us enough notice to help us through the recruitment process. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilmember Narenheim.
Yeah, no, thank you for everything you guys did at Beach Life. I mean, when I went through there, I saw the trees were cut again. Palm trees are beautiful. And also I noticed all of our name tags were different now here on the front screen here. I noticed that things, and I like the black and white logo up there. You know, it's our emblem or seal.
Yes, I see.
Yeah, since you had that last time, but not the first time.
Clerks are like, look at us, we did that.
You did that?
We wanted that. I wanted that.
Yeah, no, I like it because the other logo is not our logo. It's right. You got it. Yeah. So I appreciate it. Those are small touches that make a big difference, and we're doing that and makes a big difference. So thank you.
Hi, Councilmember. Well, I mean, I think we're moving on to
P1.
All right. Actually, on that item, let me just say also that when you went to Beach Life last year under a different chief, and then you go to Beach Life this year, you notice the differences in style, and there's merit to both of them. But last year, you'd see groups of uniformed police officers walking around and the like, and showing their presence kind of all over. And this year, you really only saw 2-3 cops in uniform in the whole place, but they were there. So. This is a different way of being present and securing the facility. And I appreciated it because I think it let everybody else kind of just relax a bit more. All right, moving on. It's Q, mayors and council referrals.
P1, the Charter Review Committee item.
Discussion possible action regarding the establishment appointments to a Charter Review Advisory Committee, adopt by title only resolution number CC 2204-022.
So, okay.
All right.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members. So on April 5th and April 19th, we had a draft resolution, and tonight we incorporated all the action and direction. And now you have a resolution that can be adopted tonight. And then also you received a blue folder that had some of the recommendations, or not recommendations, the appointments for appointees, and then also for alternates. So I'll need to make sure I get all of them. So all council members should provide those to me. And then also I've already received the mayor his input.
All right. Should we just each announce ours, or should we start with? So the mayor's announces. You want to read his?
Sure. The mayor, he has 2. So it's Mark Narain as an appointee. Alternate is Roger Light, and then appointee Joe Duiziak, and alternate is Wayne Craig.
All right. Congratulations to those appointees. Councilmember Narenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I would have submitted mine earlier. I totally forgot about it. But yeah, my 2 choices are Rolf Stutzenberg as the primary choice and Jerry Woodham as the secondary choice. Rolf sits on the board for the school board and is also on the planning commission, gets really down and dirty on things, really in the details. So I appreciate that. It's going to need a lot of detail work. And Jerry Woodham, he sits on the budget and finance commission, really helped us out through on the bond purchase. And he has a really good overall view, structural overview moving forward. So I have both talked to them recently, and they are both on board and excited to move forward. So thank you guys very much.
All right. Congratulations, Rolf and Jerry. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, my primary selection is Eugene Solomon, and my secondary selection as an alternate is Rob Gaddis.
All right. Congratulations, those 2. Councilmember
Horvath. Main delegate is Ron Morocco, and the alternate is Matthew Hensley.
All right. Congratulations to those two. Councilmember Amity?
My appointee is Kathy Wonderly, and the alternate is Norma Taperez.
All right. Congratulations to them. My appointees are former Councilmember Pinsler and Julie Young. Miss Young is a mother. She's a volunteer as a manager of the dugout at Perry Park, or the snack stand at Perry Park. She's involved with the Girl Scouts and all sorts of folks, and would be a great person to have her thumbprint on our city's charter. So she'll be the alternate. And the mayor will appoint Mr. Strutzenberg as the chair, the initial chair of the committee. So congratulations, Mr. Strutzenberg.
And then if you can, if
Email those.
if everyone can submit the person's email and phone number and their address. If you don't have their address, that's fine, we can get that. But we need some kind of way of communicating so we can get the initial meeting started.
Do you need that if they're already commissioners?
Excuse me?
Do you need that if they're already serving commissioners?
No, we have that information.
All right. Sounds good. So everybody will get them contact info for their appointees if the city doesn't already have them. Do we need to, I guess we need to pass this resolution. So I'll make a motion to.
We also need to see if there's any
public
residents
comment,
or.
right.
And I don't know if the city attorney would like to speak on this. I'm not sure.
Does he have his hand up?
Nope. Oh, there he comes on though.
Nothing to add. This is consistent with the direction we got from the mayor and council before.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right. Public comment.
Okay. I have none on Zoom or e-comments. Not sure if anybody from the public would like to speak.
Commissioner Solomon.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowenstein. Eugene Solomon, Redondo Beach. My only question would be, as part of the resolution or not, for the city attorney, if you've determined a set number of meetings, if you've determined a date that'll be, the meetings would take place, and some of the information to release to the public when all that's decided, so that those people who wish to view these meetings, who wish to review the materials for these meetings, will have ample notification of when it's all going to take place.
All right. I thought we already sent the number of meetings once a month in the original resolution. Is that right?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And reporting back to the council every other month. And you had, in the original direction to staff, you said the first meeting by June 5th. And I'll look to the clerk to set an agenda, to set the first meeting, and then I leave it up to, I'll provide the minutes and the original agenda from the last city charter review committee. And they met and they discussed, what day is most convenient. As I mentioned, they met once every other Saturday other than the original meeting. So it will be determined by the Charter Review Committee when is the best date to meet going forward.
Yep. All right. Motion, we have any public comment other than that? No e-comments? All right. Move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by me, and was that a second by Councilmember Horvath? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Passes 5-0.
Okay, so adopt by title only resolution number CC-2204-022, a resolution of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, establishing a charter review advisory committee. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Mayor and council referrals to staff. Surely this has got to be their holiday. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Yeah, I, like him, only have like 30 or 40 PRs. No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the work.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
See you in June.
On my promise not to issue BRRs, No, I'm just kidding. I don't have any more. All right. Councilmember MD.
No, thank you.
All right, perfect.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by MPT Obaji to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Perfect.